Chapter 601, Flight. Just as Ryan smashed the badge in her pocket, Harry and Sirius sat in a small train together at the Pocket subway station under Aunt Harry's house. Due to time constraints, everything here is not perfect. All facilities have only the most basic functions. For example, there is a ventilation system, but no temperature regulation system. Without air conditioning, Harry and Sirius sitting in the car soon sweated from the body of the sultry compartment, but neither of them paid attention to it, but stared nervously at the glass on the front of the compartment. Suddenly snapped. The front of the window glass suddenly jumped out of an Arabic number 15, composed of red light, occupying the entire glass window, and then quickly began to count down. Sirius stared nervously at the number. When the number became 0, he snapped at the only red button on the panel in front of him. The train accelerated like a fierce horse stabbed in the ass. Harry even felt like he was pressed against the back of the chair all at once. This feeling of fast forward in the dark tunnel is really bad, especially for Harry now. After inexplicably following Moody's arrangement, he met Sirius, but Sirius just greeted him and asked him to sit in the subway with a serious expression. After closing the subway door, he said nothing. Nothing was explained in the seat in front of him. This kept Harry's heart in an extreme depression and confusion, and the dark and sultry environment here also strengthened his mood. Fortunately, this journey was not long. They appeared in another subway station after more than a minute. After climbing up a ladder in silence and moving away the sofa that was blocking the exit, Harry saw Hermione holding her wand nervously and pointed at the place where they came out. Fortunately, he and Sirius dropped the wand. Harry, it's great to see you. Hermione greeted Harry and walked towards the garage. Follow me, Harry. We still have a long way to go today. After Sirius drove out of the garage from the block and emerged into the traffic on a freeway, Harry sitting on the co-pilot finally had the opportunity to ask how this series of actions was tonight. It's going on. It's very simple, Harry. Hermione, sitting in the back seat, said after listening to Harry's question. We are worried that the transfer has been controlled by the enemy for a specific time, so we decided to let Ryan drink the compound soup and pretend to be you. Now after we drive the car away for a distance, Sirius will take you to a safe place. Go with. So, everyone in my aunt's house is just to attract volts. Harry just said that. Hermione just sat up from the bag like a spring on her back, while reaching out to the co-pilot. Lifting Harry's chin up by his position prevented him from saying the word below. What are you doing? Harry covered his mouth for a while before recovering. He almost bit his tongue just now. To save your life, Hermione said. The mysterious man cast a spell on his name, and anyone who says his name can sense it. Everyone risked their lives to cover you today. You recruited him at this time. Really? I'm very sorry. Harry apologized sincerely, and then said a little puzzled. By the way, why do so many people risk their lives to help me lead me? Mysterious person. I don't deserve it. No, you deserve it. Sirius, who was driving, glanced at the rearview mirror and found that there was no car behind and quickly changed lanes and surpassed the big truck in front. Then he said, you are keeping everyone hope in this dark age. The key is that everyone involved in the operation today is willing to participate in the war. They are all adults and you should believe their choice. Seriously, I am now worried about what danger Ryan will encounter today, but I respect his ideas. Hermione continued, so I think that if you can cooperate with everyone's actions now, you can reach the Burrow safely. It is the best reward for everyone's dedication and possible sacrifice. Okay. Harry nodded after silent for a while, then crossed his fingers on his knees and silently prayed for everyone who was fighting. And 5 or 6 minutes ago, Ryan smashed the badge in his pocket and immediately mounted a firebolt. Percy also smiled apologetically at Tunks and put her arms around her waist. Hagrid kicked his foot and started the motorcycle. The car roared like a fire dragon, and the sidecar jittered. Good luck to everyone. Moody shouted, see you in the Burrow in about an hour. I counted 3. 1, 2, 3. The motorcycle roared with shock, and in this huge noise, Ryan kicked her feet and followed Moody. I have to say that the long-distance broom flying in other worlds and the sense of balance exercised by Ryan made his flying skills also excellent. Although still incomparable to Harry, a man born in the sky, he was confident that Voldemort could not distinguish himself as a fake Harry in a short time. Of course, Ryan must also admit that he was sufficiently familiar with how to use the Virgin Rose before he was able to meet Voldemort, who would fly in the air. But he sincerely hoped that the function would not be used today. After taking off, everyone ascended quickly, and after a few seconds they rose to a sufficient height. Ryan glanced down and found that he couldn't recognize where he had just left. At this moment he saw some dark shadows around him. Well, Ryan looked around quickly, and found a group of Death Eaters in black robes and masks surrounded them. There are about 40 people in this group. They hang in the air to form a huge circle, and the members of the Phoenix Society flew into their enveloping circle unknowingly. It seems that the Ministry of Magic is already exposed like a sieve, as long as the information to them is equivalent to telling Voldemort. Lane was full of vomiting, but this time everything was not important, because the Death Eaters, after they appeared, they directly attacked, and the whole sky was instantly flooded with screams and dazzling green light. Go north. Ryan heard the Mad-Eyed growl and immediately rushed westward with him. Because even 40 Death Eaters couldn't completely block all the space in the air, they were in a chaos smoothly out of the circle. Except for your weapon. www.mtlnovel.com. Ryan directly hit the Death Eater closest to him. The wand in the guy's hand was immediately shot down from his hand by this curse, and then fell from the sky with a spin go down. The man had to use the broom to fly down and try to retrieve his wand. But this did not improve his condition, because Mad-Eye Hamoudi is the most combative of this group of people, so the Death Eaters chasing them are the most, even if one of them does not let the group chasing behind the crowd can be sparse. After Ryan used the disarming mantra just now, more people came after him. This is awful, Lane whispered softly. At this time, in order to pretend to be more like Harry, he could only use the disarming spell to hinder the Death Eaters who came after him. These spells obviously lacked lethality. Except for the one who was just careless, other Death Eaters easily blocked Ryan's attack with iron armor. After avoiding a coma spell, Ryan saw a black smoke billowing behind the Death Eater rise from the ground, and then quickly approached in his own direction. Voldemort is here. Looking at the black figure hidden in the billowing smoke, Ryan recognized it the first time, because flying without any help is Voldemort's signature action. Saw that the figure pulled up his arm and aimed at Moody, and Moody was busy repelling a Death Eater who was too close to find this scene. Chapter 602, Fierce Battle. When he noticed that Voldemort was about to kill the Mad-Eyed Hamoudi with a life spell, Ryan slammed against Moody. A green light rubbed the two of them and flew into the distance. Voldemort. Moody reacted at once, and Ryan also knew from the name he called that he usually called Voldemort a mysterious person like himself, or to avoid that Voldemort's spell on his name, and not because of fear. Down. Moody shouted and fired a red firework, then slammed down on the broomstick. He knew that he must not be a Voldemort opponent who could fly directly in the sky while riding on a broom. He could only hope and land on the ground to take advantage of obstacles. But Voldemort understood this too, and under his command all the Death Eaters gathered to attack Ryan. Even if Moody roared to face the battle, he couldn't block so much magic alone. Fortunately, the Death Eaters had to leave the chance to kill Harry to Voldemort, so their magic was mainly directed at the firebolt that Ryan rode. Just a few seconds later, the enchantments successfully broke Ryan's iron armor curse, which was not strong, and hit the fire crossbow arrow. The broom branch behind the fire crossbow arrow ignited a blaze and then fell uncontrollably. Ryan is not Harry. After all, there is really no way to avoid so many spells when facing a fire attack. At this time, Moody was hit by 3 Death Eaters and flew farther and farther. He watched Ryan fall with a ball of fire and desperately wanted to move closer, but when the Death Eaters stopped flying farther and farther, it looks like it's impossible to pretend to be Harry. Ryan looked at the same swooping Death Eaters and the first Voldemort, thinking that even if he was running directly in a phantom shift, he was blameless because he had just seen the 6 or 7 Death Eaters behind each flying to Bill and Furong riding near them, because most of them came to kill themselves. There were only 2 left. They thought it would be easy for them to escape, but Ryan did not retreat. He magically activated the Virgin Rose and released the alchemy he had just prepared. After alchemy was completed, a pink sphere of light expanded rapidly with Ryan as the core, covering a dozen of Death Eaters in a flash. These Death Eaters didn't even have time to add protective magic to themselves and watched this sphere of light to turn themselves wrapped in. But after a second or two of breathlessness, the Death Eaters discovered that nothing had happened. Just as they were about to celebrate, the broom they were riding on exploded at the same time. Suddenly, the smile on the Death Eater's face turned to panic and screamed. You have to know that they have been chasing Ryan just now, and after losing their broom at a distance of more than 100 meters from the ground, the reaction time left for them is only 3 or 4 seconds. Not every wizard is rich enough to have magical defense props all over his body. Especially for these poor clanking Eastern European black wizards, the only magic prop on them may be the magic wand in their hands. At the same time, not every dark wizard is as powerful as Voldemort or Bella, and can accurately choose the spell to use at any time. Just behind Ryan stretched out a pair of transparent pink crystal-like wings to stop the falling trend. As the sky greeted Voldemort, there was a series of sounds from the ground full of flower pockets falling on the concrete floor. Listening to the sound, Ryan guessed that the group of Death Eaters who had just caught up was at least half dead. Who the are you? Ryan didn't have time to celebrate his record of at least 10 consecutive kills and was forced to avoid the left by life spelling spell. Then came the voice of Voldemort's hoarse voice, accompanied by there was another green light in his voice flying towards Ryan. Guess, Ryan said, flapping his wings. The whole person avoided this green light like a flexible bird and glided to Voldemort's left. Unlike the broom, this pair of wings formed by the Virgin Rose is like a natural extension of his limbs, giving Ryan excellent mobility in the air. After gaining a new position, Ryan slashed his wand, and a burning crescent of blue flames flew towards Voldemort. This kind of Ryan seriously studied the undead black scripture and the sun gold golden scripture, and the magic spell mixed with death and frost gave Voldemort no small pressure. He had to give up the next life spell and summon it from the air. A silver shield came out in front of him. The crescent blade exploded after hitting the silver shield. and the bright blue sparks flew around the shield and flew to Voldemort. Burn the figure into a nice blue torch. Fake. Ryan thought of quickly gathering his wings and diving, and a green life spell was flying directly over the top of his head. Watching the green light go away, Ryan began to snake forward and flew forward. Voldemort released several life spells again above and behind him, but he hit him. After flying for a few seconds, Ryan made a yin-yang roll with one wing, and then successively fired blue and white plasma with lightning on the oncoming Voldemort, and Voldemort summoned it again. A silver shield blocked these plasma balls. Under the cover of the plasma splashing around after the plasma ball hit the shield, Ryan sideways once again avoided another life spell, and then directly pulled out the enemy fencing when he passed Voldemort, facing Voldemort's astonished gaze. He poked hard. I have to say that Voldemort is still careless, or that he has never seen anyone who is as flexible or even more flexible than him in air combat. Nor has he seen a wizard who uses cold weapons in regular wizard combat, so he was stabbed by Ryan in a surprise. But Voldemort is worthy of being the most powerful black wizard in Europe. In this case, he still added enough magic defense to himself in time, plus the physical and magic dual defense capabilities hidden under the skin after the body was rebuilt. The snake scale made Ryan's attack not as effective as expected. The enemy fencing in Ryan's hands is indeed an artifact. When he touched Voldemort, he broke the magic defense of his body. But the intensity of the effort and the scales on Voldemort's body made the tip of the sword slip along Voldemort's waist. Fortunately, Ryan adjusted the intensity in time, and finally let the sword pierce Voldemort's thigh at an angle, and then was pulled out by Ryan with a black blood. You're dead. Voldemort looked at Ryan and gritted his teeth, the flame of anger burning all over his heart. In fact, the wound on his leg was not serious, and his wound healed immediately after Ryan pulled out the sword. He was angry because he had never suffered such injuries even before he had played against Dumbledore. Not to mention the deep sense of shame brought to him by this way of fighting with muggles. It seems I have played. Ryan was somewhat embarrassed to avoid the life-threatening spells that flew one after another like a beaded arrow and successfully landed on the ground. www.mplnovel.com. After 7 or 8 sharp branches were like arrows straight stab Voldemort that was landing. Voldemort just turned these branches into a pile of ashes and flew into the air with a slight wave of hand, and then shouted while launching a life-spelling curse. Little mouse, don't try to avoid your death, you are dead today. Not necessarily. Ryan stepped out of the hedge after avoiding a life spell, and at the same time a pink ray of light directed at Voldemort. After landing on the ground and putting away her wings, the less skilled Ryan, who was mastered by Our Lady of Roses, could finally mobilize the forces inside to attack. Voldemort turned into a silver shield as usual this time to block, but soon his face became ugly. Because the spell was different from the one that Lane couldn't shake his shield before, the silver shield made a buzzing sound this time after being hit by the pink light, and he felt a burst of pressure. Who the are you? Voldemort stretched out his left hand to stabilize the shield and shot a green light from behind the shield again. But a 2-story clay giant suddenly appeared on the ground to block the blow. Guess. Ryan said to Voldemort that at this time a red alchemy line had been outlined under his feet. Under the blessing of this earth, the clay giant rushed towards Voldemort and hardened slightly from his feet. When it rushed in front of Voldemort, it had become a stone giant, and then 2 big fists clasped and fell on Voldemort. Chapter 603, Successful Plan, banged loudly, and Ryan even felt the vibration of the ground under his feet. The giant stone giant's fists hit the ground, and a pothole with a depth as high as Ryan's waist was hit on the farmland. But Voldemort was not hit by this trick. After a cloud of black smoke spread out, Voldemort appeared on top of the giant's head and waved his wand down. The stone giant immediately collapsed like soft mud, and then a black giant snake emerged from the stone giant's wreckage. The giant snake stood up instantly and made a hissing sound and swam to the side of Ryan, while Voldemort also stood on the side of the giant snake and launched the life spell on him. Ryan waved his wand to form a huge earth wave like the sea to block the life spell, and then patted the giant snake and Voldemort. The earth waves came down from the sky like a huge stone slab. The giant snake failed to escape and was photographed as a thick smoke, while Voldemort appeared slightly embarrassed on the ground after the earth waves rolled over. Ryan saw him raise his wand and prepare to attack again, so quickly gathered a pink transparent round shield in front of him. But Voldemort did not attack, but turned his face quickly and turned his head quickly, and then the pop disappeared. The disappearance of Voldemort surprised Ryan, who was preparing from the next round of attack. He was a little curious why Voldemort had just shouted to kill himself but suddenly played and disappeared. But this did not let him relax his vigilance, but nervously held his wand and looked around, fearing that Voldemort would suddenly jump out from behind to attack him. This feeling of emotional tension was very bad, but he soon determined that Voldemort had indeed left, because Professor Dumbledore, wearing a purple robe, quickly walked out of the hedge on the other side. "You are late, Mr. Principal." After confirming that the principal was indeed in front of him, Ryan lifted his guard, and then took out a crystal test tube painted with golden runes to collect the black blood of Voldemort that was just stuck to his sword. "Go in." If it were not for the blood, he would definitely ignite an indestructible fire on the enemy fencing to give Voldemort a hard time. No way, this place is too far away from the place we had previously planned. I just came here after seeing the movement here, Professor Dumbledore said a little embarrassedly. But what you did just now was really great. It made me feel like I saw Nicole May for the first time when I was young. Thank you for your compliments. Yes, how are the others? Ryan asked Professor Dumbledore after she put away the test tube containing Voldemort's blood. I just saw Bill and Furong being chased by 2 Death Eaters. Harry, they have successfully reached the Burrow, Dumbledore said in a confirmed tone. Because I just received a notification from Sirius, but I don't know the others. But I think you attracted at least half of the Death Eaters who came to ambush and Voldemort himself. In this case, they chased the food behind others. There shouldn't be too many dead people. They will leave safely if they want to. Speaking of this, Dumbledore pulled out his wand and began to recover from the messy ground before it was beaten. Ryan also quickly pulled out his wand to help Professor Dumbledore. The land quickly returned to its original state after the 2 people were busy. After the last wooden fence returned to its original position, Professor Dumbledore took out a teacup from his pocket and bent over a flat bar on the side fence, then raised his wand and said Mentos. The teacup shuddered for a while and emitted a strange blue light, then gradually stopped and returned to the original state. It's a little late now, so the door key I was going to use for you should have left early. Fortunately, I can do this magic. Dumbledore picked up the cup and put it in front of Ryan. Put your hands up, Ryan. Lean put out a finger and put it on the cup. The cup immediately radiated a dazzling blue light. Then Ryan felt that there seemed to be an invisible hook behind his navel. He and Dumbledore suddenly left the farmland and were dragged into the void. Lane spun uncontrollably, his fingers clinging tightly to the door key. After a few seconds, his feet hit the hard ground. But fortunately he kept his balance this time, his knees just bent and cushioned, and he stood up again immediately. After standing firm, Ryan looked around and found himself in the courtyard of the Burrow. Hearing the sound of the courtyard, the door opened and Hermione suddenly ran out of the room and hugged Ryan tightly. Everyone is here, even if you haven't come back. I thought. I'm fine, Ryan said, clapping Hermione's back and approaching her. It's just that after the dozen Death Eaters were killed, the mysterious man played a head-on fight. The mysterious man ran away directly. This is amazing. Hermione looked up at him with her arms around Ryan's neck. Ryan saw in her eyes the joy of the rest of her life and some of the most primitive worship of power. Actually, it's not as dangerous as you think. As I said last time, after making the Virgin Rose, I can at least reach the same level as the mysterious man at the magic level. In this case, even if I am not because of experience his opponent, but there is no problem fighting him head-on and getting off in front of him smoothly. Ryan comforted. Besides, the soul connection between the two of you should have been able to perceive that I have nothing. It wasn't because I was nervous that you never thought about it. Hermione said that there was an expression of sudden enlightenment. Afterwards, she let go of Ryan a little embarrassedly, and then hammered it gently on his chest. By the way, you just said that everyone else is back. Is everyone okay? Ryan asked Hermione when she saw the shiners and quickly changed the subject. After hearing his question, Hermione answered immediately, great, some people have no problem. Because your pretense was very successful. So many of the Death Eaters who chased other people gave up half of them and gave up chasing to surround you according to the requirements of the mysterious man. Although the mysterious people later found that you were not Harry, they let those people continue to chase other people away, but this one-time delay allowed other participants to smoothly escape from the dangerous place. Hermione. Ryan said what happened to other people. www.mplnovel.com. The only thing injured was Furong. The Death Eaters who chased behind before they completely escaped released a heart curse at Bill, who was at his best at night. She was about to pass through the magic protection in our safe zone and was unable to resist it. After blocking another evil spell, Furong found that he had no time to release the defensive spell again, so he stood up and replaced Bill with himself and suffered this spell. She is so brave. Ryan sighed. In the chaotic night battle, it is difficult for the average person to recognize what spell is attacked in time, so Furong can do this to represent her courage and love to face death. Sincere love. And she must love Bill very much. Yes, Hermione nodded. I used to think that Hibiscus was a little too grandiose and vanity, and that she was not well suited to the British atmosphere. Now think about it. I shouldn't judge a person just by looking at it. So what's her situation now? Ryan and Hermione walked side by side to the Burrow under Mr. Weasley's beckoning. When the two of them just chatted, Principal Dumbledore gave Mr. Weasley a few words. After the talk, he has left. As the greatest white wizard, he has to do other things tonight. It's much better now. Some of the potions you left before to the Phoenix Society have a good effect on the sequelae of the heart drill. Also, the room may be very busy for a while, because everyone arrives safely, so everyone hopes to be good. Celebrate. Chapter 604, Burrow. As soon as Ryan stepped into the door of the Burrow, Mrs. Weasley hugged him. Thank goodness, you have finally returned safely. Alasto has told us what happened just now. If you have attracted most of you, Death Eaters and mysterious people, I don't think everyone will be here so safely. but you should never take a risk like this again. We have not reached the point where a child must be at the forefront. It's okay, Mrs. Weasley. Everyone is risking their lives today. How could I make an exception? Besides, isn't it safe for me to come back? Ryan comforted after Mrs. Weasley let go of Ryan. At this time, the restaurant table was already crowded with people, and some people even chose to stand by the side with their glasses because they couldn't make it. At one glance, Ryan saw the mad-eyed man standing on a pot of lace and raised his carry-on hip flask to signal to Ryan. Dude, you are so brave this time. When we first heard that you and Hermione were not coming, we were a little bit weird. I didn't expect you to do such a big thing. To Moody, you can fly like a mysterious person. How did this happen? Ron asked, excitedly patting Ryan's shoulder, and Harry beside him also looked at Ryan curiously. That was when my alchemy rose to a certain level and I naturally mastered it, Ryan said, watching Ron want to ask further. He quickly changed the subject to prevent Ron from asking questions about the color of the wings. Harry, I'm sorry that all your luggage and flying brooms have been destroyed by the mysterious people. At that time, there were too many people who attacked me and they were too powerful. It's okay, as long as you can come back safely, I can buy brooms and luggage, Harry said with a smile. I think it can't be more cost-effective to exchange some gallons' losses for everyone to return safely. That's true. Even Ron, who is usually more sensitive to money, nodded in agreement at this time, and then several people joined together in the chat at the table. Oh, I'm curious about one thing, Sirius said suddenly after a few minutes of chatting. You just encountered an ambush as soon as you started, which only shows that Voldemort has mastered the exact time we want to start in advance. Who can tell me why? It must have been a whistleblower. Watching everyone falling silent, Moody stepped forward and said what everyone was saying. Of course, I believe that nobody sitting here today will tell anyone. The leaker is probably on the side of the Ministry of Magic, because today's plan is not only known to everyone here. We used to fight the security and Ministry of Magic in order to arrange the door key. In many interactions, they should be able to easily infer our approximate time of action. Moreover, the mysterious man is not a compassionate subordinate, and it is normal to order the Death Eaters to lie there in advance and wait a few nights. So how do you explain that you and Ryan were focused on as soon as you set off, and even the mysterious man chased you directly? Percy asked, frowning down his glass. All the information we gave to the Ministry of Magic did not mention that we will prepare to stand in, but the mysterious man and most of the Death Eaters found the real target at once. If Ryan's temporary plan changed the person, if it is, the mysterious person may really succeed. Percy, I believe that the people of the Phoenix Society will not tell the mysterious people that we are transferring tonight. Ryan said, he believes in Dumbledore's vision, especially when Dumbledore is still alive. Will betray at this time. In the beginning, a group of Death Eaters came over because the protector beside me was Professor Moody. It is normal to know that he is the most powerful of the protectors today. The mysterious man didn't come after me at the beginning, but only after he confirmed it later. If someone among the people who participated in this operation reported it, I think he should come after me as soon as possible, not below I came after a while. What have you done to make the mysterious person think you are the real Harry? Lupin asked, somewhat puzzled. How are they so sure in that dark and chaotic situation? I think that's because I only used disarming spells during battles, Ryan said. Of us, only Harry will use disarming spells at this time. Death Eaters, I understand this very well. Is this true, Harry? Sirius turned around and asked Harry after hearing Ryan's words. Do you really use disarming spells first in combat? Not necessarily, Harry said after thinking for a while. But if this is the case tonight, I will probably only use the disarming mantra. Everyone at the table looked at themselves with shocked eyes, and Harry quickly explained. I remember someone telling me that the Voldemort would use the soul charm to control a lot of cannon fodder. In this situation where everyone is blindfolded, I don't want to hurt innocent people. Harry, the era of disarming curse is over. These people want to catch you and kill you. Even if you don't want to kill, at least in the future you will have to use a coma curse. Speaking, it's a few hundred meters high, and the wizard who has won the soul and soul spell can't control himself. If these innocent people are stunned, he will surely fall. Just like I gave him a bit, so the life curse is sure to die. Harry stubbornly expressed his point of view. And I think I should be able to escape even if it was there at the time. Harry, don't be stubborn, Ryan persuaded. When I was imitating you at that time, I could say that it was a death escape. If I could fly, it is estimated that now you should all mourn for me. At your level, I don't think you will do better than me. Then what do you think I should do? To kill an innocent man controlled by Voldemort? Harry looked angry. Of course not, Sirius shook his head. But Death Eaters, frankly, most people seem to regard the curse of removing your weapon as your signature behavior. I admit that removing your weapon is a good thing, mantra, but I strongly urge you to change your habit when you encounter this situation in the future. Today can only be said that Ryan's power is strong and successful escape from Voldemort, but if it is replaced by someone else, at least if Ryan is not in this way, if you directly bear Voldemort, this group of protectors, Moody, will be difficult to survive from today's operation. But I can't really hurt the innocent for my own sake. Harry thought slowly and shook his head. If I do this, How is it different from Voldemort? Everyone was speechless after hearing this, but Hermione stood up and said angrily, Harry, don't forget that the situation in Britain is already a war. Some collateral damage in the war is unavoidable. For example, Ryan fell to several Death Eaters in one fight during the fight just now. There may be a wizard controlled by the soul-draining curse. Do you think Ryan and Voldemort are the same? I don't mean that. Harry shook his head again and again as Hermione smelled of gunpowder. He really didn't mean what Hermione said, especially today. Ryan actually risked his life and should have been done by Howard Lee did www.mplnovel.com with Harry's character. It is impossible for him to criticize Ryan at this time. Hermione, Ryan hurried out around the field. I think Harry is just talking about some of his own principles of doing things. It doesn't mean to blame others. Yes, Harry nodded again and again. This is just one of my personal requirements. I also know that when I face the enemy, I look a bit pedantic, but there are some things I can't really do. That's good. I'm willing to respect your personal views. In fact, as long as it doesn't hurt others, I believe everyone can accept the different views of others. Hermione calmed down. Harry let out a long sigh of relief. When Hermione stared at him just now, he felt that the cold hair on his back stood up, as if he was being stared at by a very aggressive predator. Okay, let's celebrate. There are indeed too many things to celebrate today, Mr. Weasley said, holding up the glass in his hand, and a glass of flame whiskey was poured into his glass. Chapter 605. In the Burrow. That night Ryan and their young people lived together in a tent set up in the kitchen. Because there are too many people to live here tonight, the Burrow is too small to make enough bed. So Ryan and these young people can only set up tents for one night. Fortunately, the tents in the magic world are not so tight. To make matters worse, when Ryan was sleeping that night, a scream suddenly came from Harry's room. He immediately jumped out of the bed with a carp, and then took the wand at the head of the bed and put on his coat and ran towards the house where Harry was. When he ran out of the door, he saw that Hermione, who lived at the opposite door, rushed out almost the same as himself. Harry, what's the matter with you? While Hermione was on guard outside the door, Ryan pushed open the door of Harry's house and walked in, then watched Harry sit up in shock with a pajama look. I just saw Voldemort. Harry didn't want to hide everything he had just seen. He is very angry now, tormenting the Death Eaters in the big house with a fireplace and a long table, because they are suffering heavy losses today under the guidance of fake news. Listening is good news. Lane nodded. But this connection to the soul of the mysterious person should stop. Your Scar, it shouldn't be like this anymore. You can't let that connection go through again. I know, but I can't close my brain. Harry shook his head helplessly. It's not that I didn't practice seriously, but every time Voldemort's thinking can always break through my defense in my brain. I think you can try this. Ryan thought for a moment and pulled out a silver white strap. Tie this to your head and feel it. Harry heard the words and took the strap in Ryan's hand and tied it to his head. He said it after a while. It feels amazing. I feel like I have a pair of warm wings that protect my brain. That's good. Ryan nodded. This is a new magic prop that I just made recently. The main purpose at that time was to allow me to avoid mental interference when I was studying. Listen to what you just said. Now I can be sure as long as the mysterious person is not too close to you. Basically, you can be immune to the uncontrolled connection between the two souls you encounter. Thank you. Harry looked at Ryan seriously. Also, I swear that when I spoke this afternoon, there was absolutely no intention of criticizing you. At that time, I was really just talking about myself. Please believe me. I believe you, Harry. Ryan yawned at this point. Also, it should be 1 o'clock in the morning. You were really scared by the sound just now. Well, I'm going to bed. See you tomorrow morning. The other's vigilance is too bad. After taking the door of Harry's bedroom, Lane explained to Hermione what happened just now. Hermione nodded after listening, and then pouted at the door of the sleeping Weasley twins and Ron. If someone really attacked just now, I guess they simply can't respond enough. You should believe the double defenses laid by the Phoenix Society and the Ministry of Magic in this neighborhood, and the things they encountered today are really too exciting for them. So this time, because of the self-protection of the brain, the sleep is deep and normal. You can't use our level to judge others, Ryan said, and then he kissed Hermione on the cheek. Okay, go to bed. Get up early tomorrow. In the next few days, everyone seemed very busy. For example, Ryan started to produce a new batch of alchemy props for the members of the Order of the Phoenix with the help of Hermione. Only Harry and Ron seemed more leisurely, but soon Mrs. Weasley found them both, and soon they were busy preparing for the wedding. Ryan was thinking about the future in addition to making alchemy props during this time. He felt that it was basically impossible for Voldemort to attack the Ministry of Magic on the day of the wedding as originally, while Dumbledore was still alive. However, Ryan also lost in anticipation of Voldemort's next move. Everything in front of him seemed to be shrouded in mist. No matter what he is, the soldiers will block it and the water will cover it. It is too late to wait for Voldemort to launch an attack, but it is strange to say that when he was weak in the past, he did not worry about this. Now he can resist Voldemort directly. I started thinking. After thinking for a while, Ryan continued to finish the work at hand after a smile. In this era of war, War-related magic props are always never enough. It's really exhausting me. This was the night before the wedding, 2 days before Harry prepared to complain. Did you know? Ron and I have been scrubbing the dishes endlessly over the past 2 days, coloring gifts, ribbons and flowers, removing the goblins from the garden, and helping Mrs. Weasley bake a bunch of appetizing pancakes. No way, everyone is busy. Ryan took the plate from the cupboard to the table and put it one by one. But someone always has to prepare for the wedding. It's not enough to rely on Mrs. Weasley alone. After several people had set the tableware, the door opened, and Mr. Weasley, Kingsley, and Bill walked in, and then sat down at the table slightly tired. Probably due to the defection of 2 Malfoy mothers and children living at Gazgrip at 12 Grimmauld Place, many members of the Phoenix Society often choose to come to the Burrow for dinner. Because of this reason, the kitchen is full of people after the meal, and it is very difficult to use the knife and fork. Lion had to move his arms carefully to ensure that he would not hit Hermione sitting beside him with his elbow. "How's the situation outside recently?" Ryan broke the silence and asked himself the other side. Bill. "Nothing happened, or it's been too quiet these days." Bill lowered his knife and fork with a serious expression. "The conflict in the last 2 days was not a big deal. But all the newspapers haven't mentioned that thing recently, and even the Ministry of Magic hasn't said anything about that thing. You know that several illegal doors were used at that time. The key, if it is as usual that they have come to the home to ask the teacher for guilt, but they have done nothing now. Does the Ministry of Magic still intend to bury its head in the sand as an ostrich in this critical situation?" Harry's eyes widened. "Although it sounds very incredible, you reads www.uukanzu.com, but sometimes it is always the case," Mr. Weasley said. "Skrianger is not willing to admit that the mysterious man is so powerful, and even less so that the Ministry of Magic has been completely out of control in the current situation." "So what about people other than Scrimgeour?" Lane asked. "There are not many people in the Ministry of Magic. There are also many natural resistance people who are mysterious people, such as those hemp seed wizards on the front line. Do they refuse to stand up for themselves?" "Of course there are. But people are scared," Mr. Weasley replied. "Fear of becoming the next missing person, fearing that his child will be attacked next time. Terrible rumors are circulating everywhere, and indeed many people are mysteriously missing. But the Ministry of Magic, which should come up at this time, cannot even protect its own staff. The only thing Scrimgeour can do is to keep himself in the office all day. I really hope he is working on a plan." No one spoke for a while, until Mrs. Weasley magically received the empty plate on the console, and then brought out the apple pie. "Okay, let's be happy. After all, it's a wedding in 2 days. As the organizers, we can't be so downcast," Mrs. Weasley said. "I hope that everyone will participate with a smile at least during the wedding." Chapter 606, Prelude. At 11 a.m. the next day, Ryan put down a newly made fireball ring and heard a loud noise coming downstairs. Through the glass they saw Harry, Ron, and Ginny standing in decent lines standing in the sunny courtyard, ready to meet the guests. "Fortunately, we have important things to do, so Mrs. Weasley did not arrange anything for us. These 2 days, Harry and they were very busy." Looking at Harry standing in the courtyard, Hermione said with some luck. This morning, the courtyard of the Burrow appeared in front of everyone in a clean and tidy gesture. The rust crucible and old rain boots that were usually scattered on the back door steps were gone, and 2 new plants were replaced in the big pots. A fluttering shrub with a pot on each side of the door. Although there is no wind, the leaves dance lazily, forming a fascinating, microwave ripple effect. The chickens were all closed. The yard was cleaned, and the nearby gardens were all trimmed and dressed up. All this is full of the labor of Mrs. Weasley and Harry. For security reasons, the Phoenix Society and the Ministry of Magic have imposed a large number of security spells on the Burrow to ensure that no one can come here directly by magic. So it wasn't until a few minutes later that they saw Mr. Weasley smiled and carried the heavy luggage into the yard with 2 people. After that, Furong rushed directly to hug the female guest. It seems that the guests coming today should be Furong's parents. Furong's mother is a beautiful blonde woman wearing a leafy green robe. At least in terms of charm, it is a mixed race Meiwa. But Furong's father is indeed not as charming as his wife. He was shorter than his wife, chubby, and had a sharp little black beard. However, it seems that he has a good temper. After entering the courtyard, he kissed Mrs. Weasley's face very politely. Is followed by a series of greetings, but I don't know what happened. After Furong's mother said a word, Mr. Weasley smiled nervously, so that Ryan could hear him upstairs. But Mrs. Weasley glanced at him, and he said nothing at once, with an expression on his face that seemed to be sitting beside a friend's bed. Soon everyone walked into the Burrow. Ryan withdrew his gaze and continued to work on his own affairs. In addition to making a batch of necessities for a war that could break out at any time, he now also wrote a letter to Professor Dumbledore asking for his help. After all the things were done, it was lunchtime. After going downstairs, Ryan contacted the Dracars for the first time today. The atmosphere at the table was even warmer after they joined Ryan, because Ryan and Hermione spoke French as fluently as their mother tongue, and they helped facilitate the communication after the translation. Especially when they communicated with Ryan in French before, they were Mr. Luo Zhen, which made the French of the two people with the kind of accent in Paris area makes the Dracula feel very kind. Since Furong helped Bill block the spell during the last retreat of Harry, the Weasleys' attitude towards her has changed a lot. For example, they have now accepted Furong as their family. This also made the two seem very harmonious when they met today. "Thank you very much for your wedding gift." After the lunch, Furong and Bill solemnly thanked them. The wedding gift that Ryan gave them was a pair of big porcelain dolls, but this pair of porcelain dolls is not a decoration products, but alchemy puppets. As long as the puppet enters the magic power, it will become a person who looks exactly like the user, helping the user to distract the enemy or do some other things. Although this function can only be used once a day, each time the puppet becomes humanoid can only be maintained for 5 minutes. But for Charlie, who had seen countless treasures before working in Guling Pavilion, he understood how precious such alchemy products were. This is why he came to thank him specifically for this. After lunch, Ryan soon discovered that the Draculs were pleasant guests and were happy to help others. They are very satisfied with everything and actively helped to prepare for the wedding. From the seating arrangement to the bridesmaids' shoes, Mr. Dracul said in French, "Too cute." And Mrs. Dracul was also a good hand at housework spells, and wiped the oven clean in a blink of an eye. Hermione has been following her and Mrs. Weasley trying to learn. Gabrielle followed her sister like a little tail, trying to help a little while tweeting in French, making the atmosphere in the room alive. But after everyone was crowded into the room, the house seemed much smaller. In order to avoid encountering other people, Lane could only carry his alchemy table to the shed. It turned out that within a few minutes, Mr. Weasley, who was considered to be chaotic, was also pushed out of the house and came to the shed. "Ryan, you are here too." Mr. Weasley, who was planning to go to the shed to take a rest, looked at Ryan as he was astonishingly dispersing a ball of football-sized liquid suspended on the alchemy array into a few crystal bottles reinforced with metal. "To be honest, I think you should take a good rest, and some work will not be a problem for a few days. It should have been a time to relax now. As a result, I have seen you busy since you have been in the Burrow." After watching Ryan fill these potions, Mr. Weasley persuaded that he hardly saw Ryan taking a break these days. "Nothing, Mr. Weasley," Lane said after closing the stoppers of each crystal bottle. "Actually, this does not cause much pressure on me. Besides, I will definitely stop working tomorrow, because as a bestman of Professor Lupin, I still have to rehearse a little bit." The main reason for keeping Ryan busy these past 2 days was that after Snape defected, the lack of a potion master caused some problems with the supply of potions in the Phoenix Society. Ryan can only go to take care of these deficiencies. "I'll help you." Mr. Weasley took the initiative to walk to Ryan. "Although I only got A in the potion in the Newt exam, I helped you deal with the raw materials when making these commonly used potions." "Still no problem." That night, Ryan and his group of young people slept again in the living room in a tent. Charlie also came back from Romania in the afternoon. This wedding was the most complete visit of the Weasley family in a few years. "I heard that Miriam's magical tent will be used on their wedding day." "I have seen that tent, which is so beautiful." After they all gathered in the tent, Ginny used a kind of excitement. The tone said, "Of course, thank you, Ryan." "The set of gold and silver table where you lent us enough for everyone at the wedding is also great. Bill told me that the gold and silver utensils are more delicate than the fairies." "I'm very happy to be able to help you." Lane smiled, and so many dishes he had taken from the Lord of the Rings world before. "The craftsmanship of the dwarves is much better than the goblins of this world." The next day was Harry's birthday. When Ryan took Hermione into the kitchen, she put their gift on top of a pile of gifts. "Sorry, Harry, the time is a bit tight, so I'm a bit hasty when preparing gifts for you. I hope you like this thing." "This, is it too precious?" Harry opened the small box and found that it contained a thumb-sized embossed gold lion brooch with many rubies on it. "This is not the jewelry you imagine," Lane said. "It's what I made to match the headband I gave you 2 days ago. www.mplnovel.com. It can protect your brain and soul to the greatest extent." "Thank you so much," Harry said very sincerely, and solemnly put this brooch in his chest pocket. "After taking the headband you gave in these 2 days, I feel that after falling asleep, my brain doesn't have the empty feeling that I had before, and I have never had a nightmare." "That thing works just fine," Ryan said, "but I suggest that you can always wear it." The headband is woven with several magic metals. Even if it is worn every day, it will not be easily damaged. Harry's birthday party started on time in the evening. Due to the large number of people, he put together a few tables in the garden. Fred and George used magic to transform a large number of purple lanterns, which hung over the guests' heads. A dazzling number flashed on the lantern. 17. Ryan and Hermione sprayed purple and gold banners back to back from the tops of their wands, hanging artistically in trees and bushes. Mrs. Weasley prepared a huge golden thief-shaped birthday cake for this birthday party. In addition, some guests came to visit, such as Hagrid, Lupin and Tonks. "Relax, I have tried the clothes this afternoon, and I will definitely give you the temperament when I will give you the best man tomorrow," Lane said to Lupin sitting on the side. "That's good. I hope to give Tonks a perfect wedding this time. I still owe her too much," Lupin said. Chapter 607, Ready. Just before the dinner, The Minister of Magic came with Mr. Weasley, and he insisted on having a good talk with Harry as soon as he came. However, less than 10 minutes after the two approached the burrow, Ryan heard a fierce quarrel from the burrow, and then the door of the room opened. Scrimgeour came out from the inside angrily, without anyone say hello and leave. What happened, Harry? When Mrs. Weasley put the dishes together and everyone started to eat, Ron approached Harry and asked. I just saw Scrimgeour's expression very bad because I once again rejected the so-called suggestion of cooperation with the Ministry of Magic. Harry seemed to shake his head indifferently. I think he couldn't persuade Professor Dumbledore, so he tried to open the gap from me. He vowed that the Ministry of Magic had complete control over the current situation, but refused to explain why Voldemort would organize dozens of people to lay siege. I just questioned him, and he jumped like a thunder, and he used a wand to make a hole in my clothes. Said Harry raised his chest. Even if Ryan sat across from him, he saw a similar cigarette on his clothes. Hot holes. It seems that the mysterious person's penetration of the Ministry of Magic is far more terrible than we thought. Lane whispered to Hermione. Now that everything is abnormal, the Minister of Magic feels that everything is under control, which means that at least a large part of those around the Minister of Magic are already unreliable. People around the Minister of Magic. Hermione grabbed the key to the problem all at once. You mean that the Ministry of Magic is now close to the mysterious man? Yes, Ryan nodded. I think that after several head-on collisions, the mysterious person should now find ways to get rid of this unfavorable situation. After many fights, I think he also knows that it is possible to defeat Principal Dumbledore, and it is even less likely to capture Hogwarts School. What do you think he will do to restore his reputation and show his strength at this time? Subvert the Ministry of Magic. Hermione pressed her lips for a while before spitting out this sentence. Can't this happen? It can't be stopped. Ryan carefully analyzed. The Ministry of Magic itself is controlled by those pureblood families, so it is naturally inclined to mysterious people. Not to mention that the Ministry of Magic's many years of struggle with the principal has flooded the Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore's repulsive emotions, if we intervene, will not only make the situation better, but will probably involve a lot of energy in the endless whipping with the Ministry of Magic, further weakening the power to fight the mysterious people. Hermione shook her head in frustration, but she quickly got up and chatted with Tonks. As Tonks tomorrow's bridesmaid, Hermione hopes that she will not make any mistakes at least at tomorrow's wedding. Because of the visit of the Minister of Magic, everyone seemed to lack interest in the following banquet. After hurriedly eating all the dishes, everyone sang a song Happy Birthday and ate the cake in threes and twos, and the party went away. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Ron, Fred, and George stood outside that huge white tent in the orchard, waiting for the guests who came to the wedding. Ryan and Hermione have been with Lupin and Tonks in the tent. Lupin had few friends because of the werewolf problem. When Sirius was the groom today, he could only find Ryan as his best man. Harry naturally went to be the best man of his godfather. Unlike the customs of the Heavenly Dynasty, the best man in the West was not required to be the groom's peer. Remus, would you like some sedative? Looking at Lupin, who was nervous and didn't know where to put his hands and feet, Ryan thought of trying to get out a bottle of light green potion with a grassy scent from his arms. Relax, this thing will only make you no longer overstressed, with no sequelae. Thank you. Lupin took the potion in Ryan's hand and drank it. After a trembling, he quickly returned to normal. This potion is really effective. I was overstressed just now. After all, this is my first marriage and the only one in my life. Understandable. Lane smiled. Actually, I have been worrying about whether my legs will be stretched when I get married. Lupin wore a black dress robe today, embroidering some simple patterns with silver thread at the corners of the robe. The grey hair has been re-dyed into brown, and even Ryan used a formula found in Sirius's home to configure the glory remedy to help him wipe out the wrinkles on his face caused by the life of the past 10 years. After being transformed into a new werewolf, Lupin's body not only made up for the previous shortcomings, but even became as strong as a sportsman who regularly exercised. Unfortunately, white hair and wrinkles cannot be removed anyway. So in order to make him look like a much younger Tonks at his wedding today, Ryan did a lot of things after consulting with Hermione, and now it seems that the effect is very good. There was now a loud noise from the front of the tent. An hour ago, the burrow came from a group of waiters in white robes and a band wearing a golden coat. At this moment, the wizards were sitting under a tree, not far away, smoking a pipe and chatting, the sky making a buzzing sound. Suddenly there was a violent noise outside like a tsunami. Ryan lifted the curtain and looked out. As a result, President Dumbledore, dressed in a fuchsia robe painted with stars, walked over with French friends over Furong. Principal Dumbledore is here? This is great. Lupin also saw this scene through the tent door opened by Lane. Thanks to his help this time, I was able to give Tonks a perfect wedding. The Ministry of Magic is currently cracking down on the werewolves. Fortunately, at least all of the werewolves on our side are now in Norway. As for being injured accidentally, now all the werewolves in Norway have been healed, and the number finally stayed at 52. In addition to 2 children, the remaining 50 people can participate in the battle, and there are more than 20 people who can take the initiative to attack in the field. Lane believes that this power, once used properly, can give the Death Eaters a profound lesson. In addition to preparing some materials for the Phoenix Society in the recent days, Ryan has spent the rest of the time preparing magic props for these werewolves who are about to enter the battle after mobilizing the power of several worlds. All problems are no longer a problem. Ryan is now only further elaborate to ensure that the best equipment can be provided to those werewolf warriors. Okay, you should be in place. When the person coming to think. The curtain was opened at once. Ron put his head in the door and said to Ryan they. A moment later, Ryan and Lupin stood in front of the big tent. Today Ryan is wearing a dark blue dressing gown with a big white rose in his buttonhole. Opposite Hermione was wearing a long dress of the same color, and rarely stood beside Tunks in high heels. After passing the ring to Lupin, Ryan's life is over today. Fortunately, it was a group wedding, so the final groomsman's speech was given to the oldest of the three groomsmen, Charlie, and Ryan came to the reserved seats as they had rehearsed in advance. Today you are very well dressed, Ryan whispered, her face close to Hermione's ear. Thank you, Hermione said with a smile. Okay, let's keep quiet. I think the most critical moment of the wedding will begin. Ryan listened to Hermione's words and then looked up at the stage. Sure enough, Dumbledore was already on the stage and was ready to speak. He immediately sat up and prepared to listen to the principal's next speech. Chapter 608, Wedding. Ladies and gentlemen, after the newcomers were in place, Dumbledore's voice rang on the stage, and he was standing on the high platform in front of the three pairs of newcomers at the moment. Today we are here to celebrate the three combine the faithful souls with each other. Yes, my headdress makes Furong more beautiful, but she is a French. An old lady whispered far away, and I have to say that Ginny's skirt opened too low. Who is this? Ryan asked in a whisper, and Percy behind him looked over immediately. This is our Aunt Muriel, and the headdress on Furong's head was borrowed by her. That's a fairy jewelry. But seriously, sometimes our aunt manages too much. But think about her. We are 107 years old this year and we have no way to say anything. Lean shrugged and continued to listen to Dumbledore's speech. Only he said, today is such a happy day, and I believe that everyone is not willing to listen to what an old man like me is talking about. Let us go straight to the subject. After he finished, he looked at Lupin and said, Remus John Lupin, are you willing to marry Nefedora? Lane heard a sobbing sound from the back row, which should be the voices of the werewolf representatives. Afterwards, a trumpet-like sound came from behind the big tent to cover the sobbing, and everyone knew that Hagrid had pulled out a handkerchief as big as his tablecloth. Hermione held Ryan's hand hard and turned her head to look at him. Ryan saw the corners of her eyes become crystal clear at this time. I declare you to be a lifelong partner. After 5 or 6 minutes, Professor Dumbledore finally made all the testimonies for the 3 teams of newcomers, and then pulled out his wand and waved high above the 3 newcomers. A large piece of silver stars spewed out from the head of the wand and fell on them, rotating around their tightly hugging bodies at the moment. Fred and George led the applause and applauded, and the golden balloons above them exploded. The bird of paradise and the little golden bells flew out of it and floated in the air, so the roar of the audience added the sound of bird calls and bells. Ladies and gentlemen, Dumbledore raised his tone at this time. Please stand up. Everyone stood up, and Dumbledore waved his wand again. All the seats rose lightly and gracefully into the air, and the canvas of the big tent disappeared. They stood under the canopy supported by the golden pillars, and they looked at the sunny orchards and the surrounding countryside. Then a group of golden lights slowly emerged from the underground in the center of the tent, after which a golden glittering dance floor was formed. The chairs floating in the air are automatically gathered next to the small table covered with white tablecloths, and float lightly and elegantly back to the ground around the dance floor. The band wearing a golden shirt walks to the stage. It's really delicate. Lane sighed. Even if he has traveled so many worlds before, he swears that he has never seen a world whose magic can be applied so well in life. At this time, the waiter came out from all directions. Some of them held a silver tray with pumpkin juice, butterbeer and flame whiskey. Some held a lot of crumbling pies and sandwiches. Ryan and Hermione each took a cup of butterbeer from a tray passing by, and then found a table in the corner and sat down. Soon 3 pairs of new people stepped onto the dance floor and won everyone's enthusiastic applause. After a while, Mr. Weasley led Mrs. Dracula to the dance floor, followed by Mrs. Weasley and Furong's father. I like this song. Luna suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and she gently swayed with a rhythm similar to a waltz. After a few seconds, she stood up, sliding lightly to the dance floor, where she was spinning alone, eyes closed, arms folded. Watching Luna dancing there alone, her arms dancing around her head, like trying to drive away mosquitoes. Ryan suddenly wanted to dance for a while, so he took Hermione into the dance floor. After jumping 2 songs, Ryan saw Dumbledore sitting at a table in the distance and waved at him, so he said sorry to Hermione and walked over, and Hermione went down the dance floor with him and returned on the edge of the table. Good afternoon, Professor Dumbledore, Lane said to Professor Dumbledore sitting there. At this time, Dumbledore was sitting there with a small half glass of golden mead, smiling and dancing on the dance floor. People. Good afternoon, Ryan, Dumbledore responded, then said, watching the happy crowd on the dance floor, this is everything we want to defend. Every time I see them, I feel that everything I have tried is worth it. It's true. Lane nodded. So sometimes we have to do some very bad things, and we have to pay some price in order to protect this beautiful thing. Listening to Ryan saying something straightforwardly, Dumbledore froze for a moment, then put down his glass and turned his head to look at him. Child, you don't need to bear all the things with yourself. There are many things you can try to believe in others. I know, Professor Dumbledore. I will try to trust others as much as possible. Ryan nodded. Dumbledore saw that Ryan was insincere, but he didn't say much. Since Ryan confronted Voldemort a few days ago, Dumbledore has completely regarded Ryan as a person who has the strength to communicate with himself on an equal basis, so he is not like Ryan imagined on this kind of problem that is not a matter of principle. Educate him something like that. Okay, let's talk about other things. After a simple round of exchanges between the two sides, Dumbledore simply shifted the topic and discussed what was really going to be said today. I have received the letter you gave me before. Thanks to Miss Burns, Deputy Director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Lucius Malfoy's bailout has been completed. I can go with you tomorrow. Azkaban picked him up. Thank you. Ryan sincerely thanked him that even when dealing with this kind of thing, even if his strength is not very useful, the relationship network in the magic world cannot be built in a day or two, and Ryan lacks just time. It's nothing. This kind of thing is just a relief for the elderly like me. Dumbledore said, raised his glass and took a sip, then said, but you really think that Lucius Malfoy will be really good after it is released? Does it fall to us? Surely www.mplnovel.com. Ryan nodded. To be precise, he can only fall back to us. The mysterious man is not a kind leader. I don't believe he will give the Malfoy family another chance after the big event at the end of last semester. Yes, according to the information I received, the Malfoy family is now in the A's of Voldemort and Igor Kakarov, and with Tom's childhood personality, he cannot admit that time in the castle at the end of last semester. The attack failed because of its own reasons, so the Malfoy family responsible for the specific execution will naturally bear all the consequences after the failure, and the reason that the Malfoy is a traitor can indeed hide Voldemort perfectly in this semester. That mistake. Here comes Dumbledore's remarks. As someone who destroyed Voldemort's important conspiracy last semester, you and Hermione are now the targets of Voldemort's priority attack. Do you really not think about living in the Burrow for the rest of the summer vacation? Thank you, but I don't think it's necessary, Ryan said easily. As an alchemist, I still have confidence in my home's defense. You don't need to worry about this. Okay. Dumbledore did not continue to persuade. He also knew that the home of an alchemist was not so easy to break through. Ryan's daring to say this proved that he was indeed fully prepared. Then I will pick you up at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and then we will send Lucius to the Sirius ancestral house from Azkaban. Chapter 609, Analysis. After a few more chats with Ryan, Professor Dumbledore left. This is because, on the one hand, he is very busy in the current situation and does not have much free time. On the other hand, most of the people present at the age of Principal Dumbledore are his students. If he sits here, many people are embarrassed to relax themselves. Professor Dumbledore is looking for you? After watching Mr. Principal leave, Hermione asked with 2 glasses of cold butterbeer and sat beside Ryan. He told me that I will go to Azkaban with him tomorrow morning to pick up Malfoy's father, Ryan said after taking the butterbeer in Hermione's hands. Lucius Malfoy's bail was successful. We need to send him to a safe place. Successful bail? Hermione asked incredulously. Can Lucius Malfoy, the core Death Eater, be released on bail? Yes. Lane nodded. Before writing to Dumbledore's principal, I obtained the files inside the Enforcement Department of Magic Law through Percy. What shocked me was that Lucius Malfoy was only involved in attacks involving ordinary people in very rare cases, and there was no murder in the attack. That's why he was allowed to be released on bail. Ryan was also surprised when he saw these files for the first time, but soon he was relieved. After the end of the Second War in the original book, there was no one in the Malfoy family who was jailed because of the Death Eater status. It was not just because they provided help. Especially both Harry and Hermione are the kind of people who recognize justice from the bones. If the members of the Malfoy family are really the kind of innocent people who want to come to Harry, they will not agree to let the Malfoy completely without any punishment. Incredible, Hermione said in surprise after hearing what Ryan said. I can hardly believe that such an extreme pedigree of Malfoy actually has no human life. But that's how it is, Ryan explained to Hermione after a big sip of butterbeer. Their family is not so much pursuing pure blood as it is pursuing power and wealth. Before the Wizarding Confidentiality Ordinance was implemented in 1692, the Malfoy family had even been active in the noble circles of the Mulls, according to my Sirius family. The notes found stated that the Mull social circle had to be withdrawn from consideration of compliance with the secrecy law. The Malfoy family was also a firm opponent of the regulations at that time. This is really an interesting history. Hermione was quickly interested in this secret, and she put the cold butter beer in her hand on the table. and then asked, "What else do you know besides this?" According to the rumored news, the first Lucius Malfoy had unsuccessfully pursued Elizabeth I, and even some historians of magic said that the Queen later opposed marriage because of Malfoy's curse. Ryan first broke the big news. He further mentioned Hermione's interest. For centuries, Malfoy has been pursuing the principle of keeping its body safe. Since the secrecy code came into effect, Malfoy has cut off contact with Mole nobles. Malfoy believes that further opposition and protest will only keep them away from the new center of power, the Ministry of Magic that was just established. Their attitude took a 180-degree turn, and they began to support the regulations like those who supported the bill from beginning to end, and denied that they had any contact with moles. "It seems that every generation of Malfoy is so cunning," Hermione commented after thinking of something. "Yes," Ryan nodded. "They prefer to use the wealth or money in their hands to stand behind the scenes and do everything instead of coming to the front. That's why I believe they did not kill innocents indiscriminately." "Yes," Hermione nodded. "According to you, the Malfoy family should be the kind of person whose interests take precedence and like to hide behind the scenes. Such a person cannot be like the street gangsters who just ran openly to kill people just to vent or to have a certain idea because it's not beneficial to him." "It is true," Ryan said. "According to the archives I found, in the last war, the Malfoy family mainly bought secrets and personnel for the mysterious people and Death Eaters through their own rights and money, and at the same time provided money support for the Death Eaters. The record of the battle, or, to be precise, the members of the Malfoy family never appeared on the battlefield publicly before the last Ministry of Magic battle." "What happened to the last battle in the Ministry of Magic?" Hermione asked curiously. "After the mysterious man was resurrected, he developed a strong sense of distrust of the Death Eaters who did not escape the trial for him to enter Azkaban. So he requested that Lucius Malfoy, who had been standing behind the scenes, must be open fights with Harry to ensure that the Malfoy family can stand 100% on his side." "Is it similar to what the Tanqueray said?" Hermione said in Mandarin. "That's what it is," Lane confirmed. "The mysterious man must make sure that the Malfoy family is no longer betting on both sides this time, and must be loyal to him wholeheartedly. This public attack on the Ministry of Magic is for this purpose. So after everything was messed up, Malfoy had to fall to Dumbledore and us, because only then can he save his life and his family." Hermione answered immediately, "But you feel like Malfoy can this kind of pure blood really blend with us?" "You are wrong. We don't need him to get with us," Ryan corrected. "Just as the mysterious man has been trying to divide us, we should also use the same means to divide the Death Eaters. And accept Mole blessing is just to tell them that they have other options besides the mysterious man. Even if they can't divide the Death Eaters, they can create more cracks and suspicions between the mysterious man and his men. As for Malfoy, what are they? I don't think it matters. Not to mention that the people of the Malfoy family are pure animals of interest. I believe they will take the initiative to approach us after seeing the status quo. At least this will be the case in public." According to the previous habits of the Malfoy family, Ryan inferred. "Of course, it's basically impossible for them to come out of their hearts. But on the surface, it's enough for us. And more complicated things don't need us to think about before the war ends." "Then wish you all success with Dumbledore tomorrow." After hearing Ryan's words, Hermione raised the glass in her hand. Ryan immediately touched her with the glass in her hand, and then raised the glass to put it in the glass. "Drink the remaining butterbeer in one go." Ryan has participated in many weddings before, whether it was a wedding in the previous life or a wedding in this life with his parents. But he never saw the wedding of the wizards. Later, he and Hermione visited the entire wedding scene. They saw a bottle of champagne floating in the crowd, and in the middle of the tent was a huge cake with 2 phoenix models on top. When the cake is opened, they spread their wings and take off. At the same time, it may be because the wedding is a time when few people can get together, so this wedding lasts a long time. As night fell, golden lanterns floating in midair illuminated the ceiling, moths began to fly under the ceiling, and the atmosphere of the carnival became more and more intense. www.mplnovel.com increasingly uncontrolled. Fred and George had long disappeared into darkness with a pair of cousins from Furong. Charlie, Hagrid and a chunky wizard wearing a purple pie-style hat sang Hero Otto in the corner. After playing for hours, Ryan and they were also tired. So he and Hermione hand in hand ran to the table and chairs by the bushes outside to hide. As a result, he turned around a hedge and saw Lupin and Tunks, who were preparing to walk out with several disguised werewolves. Lupin seemed to drink a little too much, and he stumbled. And Tunks looked at Lupin with a funny face. "Are you going to leave now? I think Weasley should have enough places for all their guests." Lane looked at them and said, "We won't trouble them anymore." A seemingly strong werewolf replied. Ryan remembered that his name was William, a former error. "The British Ministry of Magic is not friendly to us. We are very happy to be able to attend the wedding. We shouldn't trouble the kind Weasley family." "So where are you going next?" Hermione asked Tunks. "Of course it should be Mrs. Lupin now. We plan to travel to Northern Europe for a month." Tunks said, "Lupin is too tired during this time and he needs a good rest." "Then wish you all the best." Ryan and they watched the wolves walk a long way before returning to the happy wedding scene. Chapter 610, Azkaban. This wedding was very late, until the party in the early morning did not end. Fortunately, Everything was fine for this wedding, no one came to attack them, and there was no news of the fall of the Ministry of Magic. But because of a little tire playing the previous day, Ryan didn't get up until 9 o'clock the next day. After hurriedly tidying up and eating a sandwich in the kitchen, Professor Dumbledore came from outside. Albus, would you like some sandwiches? Yesterday we slept a little late, so we ate a lot later this morning, Mrs. Weasley asked Professor Dumbledore. No need for the time being, I just need a cup of hot tea. Professor Dumbledore took a sip of the teacup handed over by Mrs. Weasley. Your craftsmanship is really good, especially today we are going to a very cold place later. It is very good to drink a cup of hot tea before that. By the way, Ryan, I suggest you wear more clothes later. After drinking hot tea and saying goodbye to the people in the room, Dumbledore greeted Ryan and set off. After leaving the courtyard of the Burrow, they walked along the path for a while, and they crossed the hedge to a clearing. Okay, I think there should be no one around. After looking around, Professor Dumbledore pulled out a black iron money from his arms. Ryan saw a skeleton pattern embossed on the iron money. This is a special door key to Azkaban. There is a complex magical protection in that place. Only this special door key can pass. It's time. Put your hands on it. Ryan put her finger on the iron money according to the words. After another familiar sense of weightlessness, Ryan found himself on a small black island with no grass, and Professor Dumbledore stood beside him. Is this Azkaban? Ryan looked up at a triangular black castle hundreds of meters away. The castle stood on a separate island and occupied the entire island. Only there is a slightly protruding piece of land that is not occupied by the building, directly facing the island where they are now settled. According to the trestle on the land and the two black wooden boats, Lane can be sure that it is the entrance of Azkaban. Even if it is a few hundred meters away from the real castle, Lane can feel the strong negative emotions from that castle. Even after those negative emotions merged with the local special magical environment, a thick haze formed around the castle. Even the morning sunlight cannot penetrate that haze, and because of this heavy haze inside the castle, there is no sunlight all day long, and Ryan can see the dim lights in the castle window made of black stones. However, after careful inspection, he found that the lower level of the castle was much brighter than the upper level. The people in the Ministry of Magic have changed from one to the other. They always refuse to transfer Azkaban's Dementors. Even after most of the Dementors defected last time, I wrote to ask them and they told me only some Dementors defected, and those who stayed in Azkaban were reliable. Principal Dumbledore looked at Ryan's direction and said in an angry tone, "Fortunately, I didn't know it happened a while ago." What Dementors disappeared almost of a sudden? Only the survivors dared to hide at the top of the castle, which made us a lot easier. After speaking, Dumbledore threw the black iron coin in his hand into a black stone basin filled with silver liquid. Suddenly, a small black wooden boat docked on the trestle at the entrance of Azkaban left the trestle and drove towards the island. After the boat docked, Lane and Principal Dumbledore boarded the boat. After sitting firmly, Dumbledore knocked on the boat with his wand, and the boat quickly turned towards Azkaban Castle. The closer to the castle Lane, the more depressed, especially after standing at the gate of the castle. The high black wall is like a cliff, which gives great mental pressure. This may be that the whole building was designed to intimidate people who entered the castle when it was originally designed, plus the wailing of countless prisoners and the camping of Dementors for hundreds of years. Let a large amount of negative energy gather in here. After mixing with magic, it naturally gives people an extremely depressed feeling. Hello, we took Lucius Malfoy out of prison. This is the release certificate issued by the Ministry of Magic. I think the Ministry of Magic should have informed you about this matter in the morning. After walking to the gate of the castle, Dumbledore knocked on the iron door. The iron door quickly opened a small eye-level hole on it, and Professor Dumbledore immediately expressed his intention and handed in a rolled parchment. Okay, come in. A few dozen seconds later, the man appeared again after checking the documents and opened the castle door for Ryan and Dumbledore with his wand. The gate of Azkaban as a fortress is not large, and at most it can accommodate two people side by side. But the doorway is very deep and very dark. Lane walked into the door and couldn't even see the exit of the door for a while. Fortunately, the wizard who opened the door to them lit his wand, and then led them into the castle. He said, while leading the way ahead, "The work on duty in Azkaban is really terrible. I wouldn't come here to do this if I had tight hands before." After 5 or 6 minutes of walking, Ryan and they came to a hall. Unlike the imagination, the style of this hall is totally different from the overall style of Azkaban. Under soft lighting, a few soft cream white sofas were placed around the fireplace, and against the wall were a row of bookshelves, filled with books on the top. The ground is covered with a thick red carpet. There is an iron shelf in the corner, and a few pots of beautiful plants are placed on it. There are now 2 wizards sitting on a sofa playing wizard chess. When they heard the door open, they looked up and saw Professor Dumbledore. "Principal Dumbledore, I'm so glad to see you today." A witch with her short hair greeted him enthusiastically. "You are here. Professor Dumbledore is here to go through the bail formalities of Lucius Malfoy," said the middle-aged wizard who brought Ryan and them in. "Susan, you give Professor Dumbledore some hot tea." "Peter, You use a double-sided mirror to notify Albert on patrol. Let them bring Lucius Malfoy over. It seems different from when I came here. Dumbledore and Ryan sat on the sofa facing the fireplace. After receiving the teacups and thanking them, Dumbledore asked the middle-aged man who had just received him. Wizard. When I came at least 2 years ago, I remember this house was still a black stone hall, and even dripping water from the ceiling. You are right, the middle-aged wizard just said. The 2 dorms next to this house were repaired a few months ago. After most of the Dementors disappeared, the magic the department can only make us Eras and Strikers make up for the personnel gap. We have 3 Eras and 6 Strikers divided into 3 teams here. Usually 1 team patrols, 1 team rests and serves as a reserve force, and 1 team sleeps. But because the environment in Azkaban is too bad, we can only persist if we try to make the rest and the living place as good as possible. www.mplnovel.com. At the beginning, the Ministry of Magic didn't want to spend this money because it was willing to come generally hemp wizards or half-blood wizards, said the young witch named Susan, who was very angry. Fortunately, we collectively said that if there is no corresponding protection, they refuse to come here, and they can't find someone who can replace us. In the end, we can only grind our teeth and pay us to prepare this. I repeatedly told the Ministry of Magic that Azkaban does not need Dementors. Dementors like this evil creature will only be Voldemort's helper. But magic never accepts my statement, Dumbledore said. After hearing the word Voldemort, the staff of the Ministry of Magic both shivered. Then the middle-aged wizard said, but this is much better than in the past. When I sent the prisoner over, I was all in the door. Shit. Now only those who go to the top floor of the prison cell where there are Dementors will have that feeling. Boom boom boom. Just as Dumbledore was talking with the head of Azkaban, there was a long, 2-3 short knocks on the other door of the hall. The middle-aged wizard nodded apologetically to Dumbledore, and then walked to the door, holding his wand. Lightning. The middle-aged wizard shouted. Thunder. There was a thick voice outside the door, and then the door opened, and a wizard with white temples came to the front, and the 2 wizards walked in with Lucius Malfoy in prison uniform. Chapter 611, Past. Okay, the people have arrived, and we continue to patrol now. After letting Lucius Malfoy stand in the middle of the hall to lift the shackles, the 2-faced wizard had waved to the people in the hall. Just left. Lucius seems a little depressed. The whole person looks very indifferent, basically has no reaction to the outside world. This is normal, and it will be true for anyone after living with Dementors for a whole year. Let's go. I think Lucius should be able to recover after returning to his wife and children, Professor Dumbledore told Ryan, and then they said goodbye to these guards and left Azkaban. Lucius, how are you? After Ryan knocked on the gate of Grimmauld Square 12, Narcissa Malfoy opened the gate immediately. Seeing her look, should have been waiting here in the morning after learning that Lucius was released from prison today. That, Mrs. Malfoy. At this time, Professor Dumbledore was not suitable to come forward, so he could only rely on Ryan. He just stayed with Dementors for a longer period of time, just to recuperate for a while. That's good, Mrs. Malfoy murmured, and then walked Lucius Malfoy into the room. And Draco Malfoy, who followed, very seriously thanked Ryan. Since such a big change at home, Malfoy has changed a lot. As Sirius said, the little guy at Malfoy looks much better than his father, at least not so annoying. Professor Dumbledore sent Ryan back to the burrow and left. Just after the principal left, Harry turned from the corner with a complex expression on his face. Ryan, can I talk to you about something? What's the matter? Ryan looked at Harry's expression behind him, worrying that Harry wouldn't have suddenly awakened something strange after seeing so many weddings yesterday, but things didn't turn to strange places. I just want to talk to you about Principal Dumbledore. Harry said that he was a little uneasy at this point, because at yesterday's wedding, I heard something about Principal Dumbledore's youth from some old people. Some of these are things we have never heard of before, I think. What happened to Mr. Principal when he was young? Ryan thought of something. It seemed that Harry had heard something about Professor Dumbledore's past at the wedding, which was precisely incomplete and with a strong personal tendency. Argument. He knew that he needed to tell Harry some real truth at this time, because any small gap in the war era would cause serious problems. About Mr. Principal when I was young, I really know a little more than you, Ryan said. Because I learned from some special channels, the 7 novels and 9 movies of my last life, and a lot of materials from the perspective of Pottermore. I knew something about what happened to our principal when he was young. He is not a perfect person, but definitely not an evil person. So what's going on with his sister? Harry blurted out after listening to Ryan's words. Then he said a little embarrassedly, this was what I heard from Ron's Aunt Muriel at the wedding. She told me that Dumbledore imprisoned her sister at home. Just because she was a dumb gun, she might be ashamed of their family. Ryan, Harry, what are you two standing in the yard? Ryan heard Hermione's greeting just after he heard Harry's words and was about to answer. It turned out that Hermione saw that the two had been standing at the door, feeling a little strange, and came out to call them. It's okay, we are talking about something, Ryan said to Hermione, then turned to Harry. Let's talk after we enter the room. It's a bit silly to stand in the yard now. Harry seemed to think so too. At this time, several brothers of the Weasley family and Ginny had gone to Belle's new house, so the room seemed empty, and only Mrs. Weasley was cooking in the kitchen. Sound. If you want to chat, you can go upstairs and talk. Standing in the courtyard looks a bit strange. Well, I'm going to work for Mrs. Weasley, otherwise it is difficult to guarantee that lunch will be served on time. By the way, Ryan, this morning is everything going well? Hermione asked after they went into the door. Very smooth. Lane nodded. Lucius Malfoy has reached 12 Grimmauld Place. Fortunately Sirius took his wife and the Lupin couple to travel in Northern Europe. Otherwise, I believe it will be noisy now. After Ryan and Harry walked into Ron's room and closed the door, Ryan began to tell Harry about the past, including why Dumbledore's father was in prison, his sister was silent, and when the principal was young, the experience with Grindelwald. The amount of information contained in this conversation is so great that Harry seemed to be in a trance during lunch. Harry, what's wrong with you? Ginny asked when eating. Why do you think you are very confused now, and you have been like this since this morning? It's okay. Harry recovered, and then calmed down. It was just too tired to play at that wedding yesterday. And then it was only Sirius's invitation to drink half a glass of fiery whiskey. Sirius is a bit over, Mrs. Weasley said dissatisfiedly. Harry, he is just an adult, how can he drink such a strong wine? It's okay, I don't think it's a problem with alcohol. Just take a short break. Harry had wanted to find an excuse for his abnormal state to cope with the past, but he didn't expect this fire to burn Sirius, so he quickly refuted. It's just that Mrs. Weasley didn't think Sirius was innocent. It seemed that she planned to wait for Sirius to come back and discuss the parenting issue with him. After lunch, Ryan and several of their students got together to write summer homework. While writing, Harry suddenly asked Hermione, Hermione, have you heard of the Silent One? Of course I know. Hermione took out a book from her school bag. This thing is not classroom content, but there is this content in the supplementary extracurricular book of the Black Magic Defense Technique class. Yes, this is it. Hermione took out a big black-skinned book from her bag, titled The Source and Flow of Black Magic, and she turned to a page where she read, the young wizard will restrain her own in order to escape doom. Magic power. But due to lack of guidance, they did not learn to control their own power, so they derived a parasite dark magic power silently. It is a very unstable and difficult to control black magic. It moves very fast, will break away from the host and attack others. In the historical records, there is no case that the silent person can live 10 years old. The silent person is the host, and is hosted by the dark magic power of silently. Once the wizard is subjected to great emotional fluctuations, the silence in the body will explode, and the silent person will become a black, unsubstantial black mist. Destructive power is extremely powerful. www.mplnovel.com. If they have not used magic, they will silently bite the host, and eventually take over the host's body without control, resulting in disaster. Fortunately, with the separation of the magic world and the mole world, children are no longer forced to hide their authenticity in their own world, and the number of silent people is gradually decreasing. Today we can hardly find silent. So what would you do if you found the silent in the past? Harry went on to ask, and Hermione gave Harry a curious look, because he was not a good learner. But since he asked, Hermione felt he should answer it. It will be executed directly after early detection, which is for security reasons. Hermione said, but by the 20th century, because of the preventive detention of silent people by humanitarian wizards, the place of detention is often the country wizard prison. Understood, I understand. It all makes sense now. Harry stood up excitedly. Ron, Ginny and Hermione stared at Harry a little confused, not sure what he was going crazy at this time. Only Ryan knew that Harry had figured out what Professor Dumbledore's past was all about at this time, and there was no longer the doubt and confusion about everything around him. Okay, nothing, Harry explained quickly after watching everyone staring at himself with strange eyes. I just figured out a key question just now. Let's continue with our homework. Chapter 612, New World. After dinner, Ryan and Hermione declined the Weasley family's enthusiastic retention and returned to their estate. In the previous month, the two people were really busy and a bit overdone, so after returning to their home, they took a good rest and rested for 2 or 3 days to completely soothe their spirits before arranging the next plan. I think we should go to a new world and turn around, Hermione suggested. It is simply that our own strength cannot grow so fast. I think we need to get more knowledge from different worlds. From another angle strengthens our strength. This is also a good idea. Ryan nodded in agreement. Just like a mentor said, quantity is also a kind of quality. If he can master enough abilities, Ryan feels that this will be in a favorable position in the next war. After the battle at the end of last semester, Lane gained 50 offset points. After adding the previous offset points, Lane now has 258 offset points, which means he can go to any world. After careful thinking, Ryan decided that this time he will go to the highest level of the world to see if he can gain more power. Actually, Ryan has the coordinates of a 9th level world, which is the world where Jill was before. However, considering that when Jill was born, there didn't seem to be any major events in the world, and he should not be involved in any important things. In particular, most of the magic effects in that world coincide with the magic effects that Lane now masters, and they lack sufficient complementarity. so he feels that he has opened a new world to see. Maybe there will be some unexpected gains. So after making all the preparations, Ryan took Hermione, Rose Crystal and Jill to a new world through the Wanji grocery store. The woods are the woods, Rose Crystal complained. Aren't you brothers, son of the jungle? Every time you go to a new world, you will appear in the woods. I don't know what's going on. Ryan also looked dumbfounded, but although everyone was vomiting together in such a strange situation, there was no delay in the business, and soon Rose Crystal rose into the air to investigate the surrounding situation. There seems to be a fight near us on the left, because I heard the sound of metal collisions and screams. But the specific situation was not clear because of the branches blocking me. Soon the Rose Crystal fell from the tree, speaking to Ryan. I also feel the death of life, Hermione said after taking a serious look at the direction, just like Rose Crystal. And there is more than one life lost. After confirming the result of the investigation, the three immediately followed the open space in the forest to the place where the investigation was made. 2 or 3 minutes later, they heard various shouts. After rushing out of a bush, the three immediately saw what happened on the dirt road in front of them. More than 24 people were struggling to resist the carriages on the road more than 30 meters away. Of course, the resistance was not all humans, but at least most of them looked like humans. The attacking party is just the opposite, a group of things that are only half the height of humans. They have flat faces, huge nostrils, pointed ears and huge mouths. The body is ugly yellow-brown. There are about 150 of these monsters. Most of them only have extremely poor equipment. However, there are 12 monsters riding wolves that seem to have a full set of armor and weapons, although these weapons and armor do not seem to match at all. The commander is 2 monsters that are almost as tall as humans and densely armed. These 2 monsters are standing and pointing. It seems that the side of the human convoy has reached the end of the crossbow, and 5 or 6 people are lying on the ground without knowing the life and death, and the others are slow. If there are no accidents, the ambush will end in a fiasco. Hands. The current situation makes it easy to tell who is the enemy. When Ryan notified others through his soul, he immediately condensed a flash of lightning and shot at a monster standing in command from a height. At the same time, Hermione also shot a red and black intertwined light attacked another commanding monster. 2 monsters were killed instantly after being hit. At this time, Rose Crystal also flew over the battlefield and shot a lot of crystal fragments to the ground. After that, the whole person threw down his hands and waved his sword into the monster group to kill. For her, this monster of her height has never been seen before, and this time it is just time to try your own swordsmanship. Although this group of monsters has a large number of people, their combat effectiveness is very general, especially when the commander was put down in the first round, and the Rose Air Crystal airstrike just took care of the Wolf Knights to make them almost wiped out. The morale of these monsters dropped to freezing point. Rose Crystal and the guards of those teams just took advantage of the situation to cut down a dozen monsters, and the remaining monsters ran to the jungle like birds and beasts. However, these monsters have not escaped Hermione's shadow magic, especially when facing such a large number of enemies that are not strong. Hermione has maximized the lethality of his shadow magic, and the team members standing on the dirt road seeing the little monsters in the woods running, they fell silently one by one. Soon after the last monster was cut by his shadow and his throat was killed, Ryan and Hermione also rushed to the battlefield just now. By this time, the two had learned the local language from the soul of the dead monster. The shop quickly walked out of a middle-aged, fat-looking man dressed in red fine linen and fur robes. He has black eyes and hair, and he has a neatly trimmed mustache, and he looks like an Italian overall. It was just that the sweat on his head and the dust on his body made him look embarrassed. Thank you, 2 spellcasters. We are a caravan going to do business in Silvermoon City. If it is not for your help, we will surely become dinner for those goblins tonight. As Ryan and Hermione, who had run several regiments in private, they knew where they were at once. Ryan spoke here. We are the masters who want to pursue the knowledge of magic. I heard that there is a place in Yainayu City that is willing to teach people magic. So we want to go to school. Since you're going over there, we can just walk with you. These roads in the north are not very clear. The store representative easily believed what Ryan said, because Ryan had just shown their mage status just now. At the same time, Silvermoon City, as the Pearl of the North, did attract a large number of professionals, and there are not few masters who come to study like Ryan. Caravan members have seen many such people in Silvermoon City before. It is an honor for the 2 distinguished masters to wish us to go with us. We will reach Silvermoon City for a long time further north. These stubborn goblins only dare to patrol the Silvermoon City Patrol. Do these activities outside the scope of the circle. For this caravan, it is absolutely good news for 2 casters to join. Whether the caster can reduce the risk after joining, or a good relationship with the 2 casters is beneficial. As far as I know, Silvermoon City will usually send enough patrols to protect the security between their ruling areas. www.mplnovel.com Hermione asked after thinking about what she had seen in the game manual before. No way. The winter in the Northland is much longer than elsewhere. The caravan leader's face became a little ugly. When winter is approaching, Monsters in the north will go south and plunder around. Yinayu City can't divide enough people. They can only guarantee to block large stocks of enemies. Then why didn't you come over early? Hermione then asked. This lady, some things sell better in the winter, so we are taking a certain risk at this time in order to make more money. We come to Silvermoon at this time, and we don't encounter these disgusting things every time. Creatures. The caravan leader is now more sure of Ryan's identity. Hermione's question was just like a little noble lady from other places who is not familiar with the world. Hermione shouted her tongue a little embarrassedly, then turned her head to look seriously at the caravan that cleaned the battlefield. Fortunately, only 2 of the 5 or 6 people who had just fallen to the ground were killed. The other people were rescued by Ryan with their help. However, in this world, due to the extremely active magical power, the remains of the victims must be brought to the city to be buried by the priest before they can be buried, otherwise they will easily become undead attackers. It seems that after a while and half can't handle all the things, Ryan and they simply started talking to the caravan leader to try to get more information. Chapter 613, Contact. What are you talking about? Miss Erasjo will soon resign to the position of High Master. In the chat, Lane received a very important message, that is, this time period is just the first unified regime of the Northland Silvermoon Federation. On the eve of this group of businessmen also ran for this matter, because it means that the Northland will develop further, and the recent moon celebration will definitely consume a lot of materials, and the goods in their hands can be sold for a good price. Now the caravan in front of Lane is a small caravan from Silvermoon City, which is a relatively safe route running to Deepwater City. Some places farther away, such as Sanderby or Adabu Fort, are not accessible to them. In this medieval environment, long-distance running business is a very dangerous thing. For example, Ryan's army in the Kingdom of the Lord of the Rings and the World of Songs of Ice and Fire, in peacetime, except for the city and training, the rest of the time used to strangle robbers who can never be killed on trade routes. For example, if this caravan is not meeting Ryan, it would be nice to be able to rush out half of the people, and the goods will definitely be lost. We seem to be one step late. It seems that we can only enter the city tomorrow. After cleaning the battlefield, everyone accelerated their pace. It's a pity that when they rushed to the gate of the city, they found that the gate had been closed. So where are we going tonight? Ryan asked the caravan leader after looking at the sunset at the horizon. It shouldn't be camping. That's not enough. There are a lot of small villages around here. It happened that I had a friend's house nearby, and his family opened a hotel part-time, and we can stay at his house for one night. The caravan leader said. Everyone walked down the main road and walked eastward along the city wall. Before going too far, I saw a small village with 7 or 8 buildings. One of the buildings had a sign hanging on the door, and a wooden wine barrel and a pitchfork. After the caravan was settled, Ryan immediately took Hermione and Rose Crystal to the tavern on the first floor to find out the news. This is a good place for the peasants nearby to spend a few coins after spending only 1 silver coin. The spoils just now, and they heard a somewhat unusual news. Are you wizards? Said a rosacea farmer drinking the ale invited by Lane. Then you can visit Amanda. She and her husband, who is a famous chef in Silvermoon City, live in the house on the other side of the field. This couple is very good, but this morning their chimney there was a smell that I smelled the worst in my life, and I am a little worried about them now. It sounds like the beginning of a mission. After the farmer walked away with the wine glass, Hermione said to Ryan, but for us, this is an excellent opportunity to get in touch with local casters and magic. We go now. Lane very much agreed with Hermione's point of view, and after saying hello to the caravan leader, the 3 of them walked to the farmer's place just now. At this time it was getting dark, and the farmland without light pollution seemed very dark. Ryan and Hermione could only hold a lantern grass in one hand to illuminate themselves, while Rose Crystal was flying low above their heads. Watch around. After 500 or 600 meters, they saw the small wooden house nestled in a sparse maple forest. But the strange thing was that the door was half open, and Ryan saw the darkness inside through the crack. It's not right. Normal people who will open the door at night. Ryan and Hermione pulled out their wands at the same time. Then Ryan created a breeze and opened the door, lit the wand in his hand and took it in. They saw the one facing the door. It is a living room with a large sofa that looks very comfortable. On the left is an armchair placed in front of the fireplace, and under the window on the right is a desk. It doesn't seem to be anything here, but I heard the sound of tearing behind the front door. After a brief glance, Ryan and Hermione crept through the living room, but they leaned against the fireplace. As they walked to the fireplace, the fire stick on the side came to life at once, and then thrust sharply to Ryan walking in front. Ryan responded in time to block the blow with an iron armor curse, after which Rose Crystal swooped down and waved the sword to cut the iron rod with 2 cuts. This should be an activated item. We'd better be more careful, Ryan said after checking the 2 iron bars that fell to the ground, because considering that there might be enemies in the house, they had to give up the magic investigation. But the result was not. I think there are still institutions waiting for them. After being attacked, the 3 men continued to move forward vigilantly, but did not wait until the second round of attack until they reached another door of the house. The sound came from here. Lane closed his eyes at the door and listened to Hermione and Rose Crystal through the soul connection for a few seconds. It looks like the enemy is probably inside, ready to fight. After everyone was ready to fight, Ryan threw a flash of sunlight crystal into the room, and the strong sunlight enveloped the whole room. A scream came from the left. Screamed at a 2-foot-tall, dark red skin with leather-like bat wings, spiked tails, and ultra-small humanoids with curved sharp corners. Ryan and Hermione, who are running team enthusiasts, immediately recognized that this was a little devil from Battle Hell. The next battle ended in an instant. While the little devil covered his eyes stabbed by the strong light and failed to react for a while, Ryan quickly blocked it with a curse spell, and then Rose Crystal quickly waved the crystal sword. The struggling little devil cut into a dozen pieces of table tennis-sized meat, and the whole process took only a few seconds. After confirming that the enemies were cleared, they heard a weak moan. Ryan and Hermione quickly walked to the side of the bed, and then saw a bruised man with blood on his face collapsed on the bed. His wrists and ankles were tied. Ryan hurriedly released the shackles of this man and Hermione quickly checked his physical condition with magic. The condition of the man is much better than expected. Most of the blood on his body is just some ketchup. It looks weak now because of a paralytic poison and some dehydration. The man was awake after being fed a bottle of antidote and a glass of water. He told Ryan and Hermione that they were the husband of the wizard Andarin and Chef Gandro. He made it this way because he made a cheese gillum with his wife. The result was when his wife went to the laboratory to study magic. This little devil sent by a demon named Wagang Demon who had enmity with his wife a long time ago just came in to make trouble. www.mplnovel.com. It triggered the violent mode of the cheese gillum and wounded Gandro, and then tied him. He beat him in the bedroom. Remember, don't use flames against that gillum. Flames will only make him stronger, and this gillum is very strong. After learning that Ryan and 3 of them were going to destroy the uncontrolled cheese gillum, Gandro seriously told, except that he only knew that the gillum was still in the house. But he didn't know the exact location. Soon they came into the dining room alertly from the living room. There was nothing strange in the dining room, but after stepping into the kitchen through another door, traces of the destruction of the gillum appeared in front of them. A few iron pans and kettles fell to the ground, the pottery was broken, and the broken pieces were everywhere in the room. Yes, the wall was splashed with a mixture of spices, and it was still dripping wet. After entering the tattered kitchen, they saw a door in the room that looked like a door leading to the basement. It was closed and held tightly by a chair. It seemed that someone was afraid of something coming out of it. Reminisce about the gillum that Gander just said did not leave this house. Ryan, they probably can be sure that the gillum is now in the basement. After confirming that the enemy is a gillum, Ryan summoned his own Lady of Roses to float in front of her chest and opened the door of the basement and walked in first. He felt that he could just have a magic against this enemy. Use. Chapter 614, Silvermoon City. As soon as the basement door opened, a burst of heat came, and the heat was mixed with cream and tomato sauce. This should be one of the enemies I've seen that smells the best, Hermione said after putting a shadow shield on everyone. However, such a large ball of cream dessert is not easy to beat, because we have no experience with it at all. Don't worry, if I feel right, the battle will end soon. I can be quite sure with this construct. After Ryan first walked into the basement, he saw a standing mess pale white humanoid explode. Ryan manipulated the Virgin Rose to release a pink light containing a large number of color runes on the construct. The cheese construct that was walking step by step was stopped immediately after being hit, and then a series of slight explosions occurred inside. Hermione looked at the big white guy standing there strangely when she came down. Just when she was about to say something, the large cheese dim sum structure in the basement suddenly swelled. Get up! And then explode with a bang. Fortunately, before they all had enough magical protection on themselves, no one was injured, but they were taken aback. This is really a magical world. I felt this way when I was playing games. Now when I really arrived here, I found that the games on the desktop are far from the real world. Hermione came to be broken after checking the pieces before saying, at least I've never heard of such a strangely adequate body no matter where I was from before. Hello, how is the situation in the basement now? Just after Ryan and Hermione examined the now destructed structure, a voice of a middle-aged woman came from the basement. That construct has been wiped out and everything is safe underneath, Ryan replied. Soon a middle-aged female mage in a robe walked down the stairs. After looking at the mess in the basement, she confronted Ryan and he, Minutes said, thank you very much for saving my husband. My name is Andarin. I'm a mage. I hope I can do something for you in return for your help to our family. We are a wizard from a distant place. My name is Lane, and this is my fiancée Hermione. The reason why the two of us came here is to hope to be able to exchange knowledge with other wizards. Lane introduced very simply, knowing his identity. He spoke slowly after considering it. So, I hope I can learn something from you. Of course. The female mage Andarin nodded. Knowledge comes at a price. As long as you can bring out the knowledge that interests me, I will exchange the corresponding knowledge with you. In addition, in order to thank you for saving my husband, I can teach you magic. This is simply amazing, Ryan said happily. He didn't expect to get new magic knowledge on the first day of coming to this world. We really didn't come to the wrong place. The place of Silvermoon City really is like a legend. It's like a mage's paradise, where all kinds of magical knowledge is tightly blocked in our hometown. Only the immediate blood relatives of the knowledge master can learn. That's really bad, Andrin said. When everyone went upstairs together, only communication can promote the development of magic. If everyone only cares about hiding their secrets, the development of magic will be very slow. This is indeed the case. This is why we came out to study, Hermione whispered, and then greeted the rose crystals who were ambushing on the room beams before greeting them on the back road. Seeing a purple shadow suddenly emerge from the beam of the house and flew down, Andrin was surprised, but her eyes lit up when she discovered that she was a puppet. Ryan, what is this puppet? My name is Rose Crystal. Rose Crystal floated in the air elegantly and said to Ryan after a dressing ceremony. My elder brother is my creator. This is unexpected. You are so young. I'm sorry I didn't expect you to be so powerful. I'm honored that you have come to my house as a guest. Please allow me to leave now to prepare a sumptuous banquet for you and your wife. Andrin had left some words without a preface and hurriedly left, leaving Ryan and her thoughtful Hermione with a sullen expression. What's the matter with him? Ryan felt a little inexplicable. The middle-aged mage just had a good chat just now. Why was he suddenly so excited to say a lot of words and left? I think it may be the reason why you are so powerful in her eyes, Hermione said thoughtfully. If the statistics of performance when I played the game were correct, there is a necessary spell for making alchemy creatures like Madonna Rose that has its own life. This is a 9th level spell of change. To release such magic means that you are at least a powerful mage with professional level 17. Although the real world may be different from the digital representation in the game, there will not be such a precise level division. But after mastering some magic, what should be clear to most people. Indeed, as Hermione said, Andrin appeared to be much more humble in the subsequent communication. This attitude made it easier for Ryan to communicate. After eating, Rose Crystal ran to the caravan in the hotel. They left the matter, and Ryan and Ryan started a discussion directly. In the next 3 days, Ryan set up tents directly in the open space in front of the hut door, and then began to exchange a variety of knowledge. Although there are no small differences in the use of magic in different worlds, but the power, the essence has not changed much. After spending some misunderstandings caused by different cultures at the beginning, the following communication was very smooth. With both parties having a heart to communicate, Ryan quickly collected all the magic written in Andrin's spellbook, but by watching Andrin happy, he knew that he benefited greatly from this communication. It can even be said that she thinks she has gained more than she paid. Time has passed so quickly. After the exchange on the morning of the 4th day came to an end, and Ryan looked at the calendar on the wall and said in surprise, then he said to Ryan and them, since you plan to go to Silvermoon City to exchange magic, then I think I can introduce you to Miss Erasjo. Miss Erasjo? Hermione was a little surprised. Can you introduce her to us? Of course. Andrin seemed a little proud of this, because my husband and I are in charge of eating and drinking at the Moon Celebration Banquet. www.mtlnovel.com. We have the opportunity to meet Miss Erasjo. At the same time, I believe that Miss Erasjo will not refuse in this situation. Meet two of you powerful and friendly mages. This sounds very good, said Hermione. And half an hour later they were standing at the gate of Silvermoon City. Because Andrin and her husband were the guarantors, Ryan easily passed the interrogation of the Silver Knight and entered the city. From the tone of the knights, Ryan found that he was very welcome to be a mage like this. Because the mages are expensive, they are not as good as those rude mercenaries or adventurers, or they are drunk and fight everywhere. After listening to Hermione's inner doubts, Andrin smiled and answered. Where are we going next? Ryan asked. Go to our shop first, Chef Gandro said. Miss Erasjo will come to our shop to eat several times a month. As long as you stay in our shop, you will always meet her. Gandro's restaurant is located on the side of a small square, which is very modern, with fountains, benches, flowers and trees. There are also some small vendors selling snacks and various small things. There are a lot of children playing here, and they don't have to worry about being kidnapped by bad guys like most medieval cities, because from time to time in the square there are Silver Knight patrols to maintain order. At the same time, Ryan could feel that the two statues on the fountain were not pure stone carvings, but two graphite statues of alchemy structures. The average adventurer is really not an opponent of these two golems. No wonder this place will be called the Pearl of the North, Hermione said by holding Ryan's hand. It seems that we did come to the right place this time. Chapter 615, Erasjo. Miss Hope, when I think of you, I feel sweet in my heart. Wouldn't it be today, in this city, with you? A bard sang a song praising the 7 sisters of the north in the square. Just sang to the end of the part about Miss Erasjo. Around the small merchants or casual citizens began to sing along. You are like a lily in the valley that prevents me from letting go. Although sometimes we feel sad and weeping, and emotions can't help ourselves. But when you think of your face, sorrow will turn into joy. Amidst the singing, the crowd suddenly gave way to a gap. A young silver-haired woman wearing a simple white linen robe did not sing along, but walked along the gap to the hotel. The strange thing is that even if her movements are so big, no one around finds the anomalies here, and everyone else ignores her like watching the air. But Ryan discovered the lady, just when she was about 10 meters away from her. This is because after he mastered the rules of alchemy, he brought him extraordinary perception. As she continued to approach, Hermione also sensed her existence through her perception of life. The lady was a bit taller than Ryan, but instead of looking burly, she gave an extremely elegant feeling in Ryan's eyes. The charm of her was even stronger than the glamour girls she had seen before. From her silver hair and eyes and this casting technique with almost no magical fluctuations, Ryan quickly recognized that the lady in front of him may be the local master, the highest master of Silvermoon City, and the Lady of Hope in people's mouths. Miss Shine, the Supreme Lady of the future Silvermoon Federation leader. Welcome to you, the caregivers of the will of the world. And this Miss Master who holds the death, thank you for helping the caravan before. Sorry, for security reasons. In the past few days you and the Gandru couple communicated. I let the harpists investigate you. But the strange thing is that you did not leave any traces before meeting the caravan, as if it was suddenly sent from an unknown place. Miss Erasjo did not realize that she unwittingly told the truth. Ryan rubbed her forehead somewhat helplessly. The biggest problem in this powerful world is that it is easy to be seen by people. However, since it has been exposed that others have come to the door, he has no plans to do anything bad. Ryan simply gave up pretending to salute. May the light of Austrian law always envelope you, the voters of Mysterious Lady. As a Misra voter, Alastra can naturally see some things in Ryan's body, especially his closeness to nature. Although Hermione's body is surrounded by the power of death, but as the choice of the cycle of life and death of all things as the pursuit of the path of death power, she is more like a kind of druid than a necromancer in the eyes of Erasjo. More importantly, there is a very obvious trace of world consciousness in the two of them. People or creatures that can be favored by world consciousness are basically people of neutral or kind camp, and they are welcomed in most places, especially the city of Silvermoon City dedicated to the Order of Peace. Not to mention that Ryan removed part of his magical cover to show his friendliness, and after feeling Ryan's strength, Erasjo showed a somewhat surprised expression on his face. She did come here specifically for Ryan, because Ryan was a harpist. On the day she received Ryan, they sent news to Silvermoon about the arrival of two powerful mages. This most recent period is the critical moment when Erasjo seeks to establish a United Nations. The spirit of everyone around him is strained a little under internal contradictions and external threats. After learning that a spellcaster who had mastered 9th level magic came to Silvermoon City, he naturally launched a targeted investigation. But strangely, what about the whereabouts of Silvermoon City where they met before the caravan? None was investigated. This naturally aroused the interest of Erasjo, especially although she is a powerful legendary spellcaster and the supreme leader of the Silvermoon Federation, but it is not the kind of old-fashioned and noble aristocracy. On the contrary, there are many young men and women every year to her support and funding. She went further in the professional field, so she chose to see it in person, and this habit brought him a big surprise today. She really didn't expect Ryan to be a legendary spellcaster, although it was just a legendary one. But if you can win it, it is also a powerful help. Don't look at the fact that Erasjo has no shortage of mages, but there is never a legendary spellcaster. What are you doing here? I think as a legendary mage you will be welcomed wherever you go. Why do you want to come to Silvermoon City? Elason asked the key question. For such a problem, Ryan had an abbreviated version, and he said sincerely when he looked at Erasjo's eyes. We came here from a very distant place mainly to study, hoping to obtain knowledge that we have never mastered before. At the same time, we can see if we can do business and exchange some of the things we need. As for why we can only go to Silvermoon City, it was an accident, because we didn't know where teleporting magic would take us before we set off. But after we came out and found that Silvermoon City was the nearest city, we came over. But please rest assured, we are about Silvermoon City and you. There is no hostility. Erasjo nodded her head slightly, which was similar to the analysis before she and the harpists came, and had the divine power given by the magic goddess, so that she had the special ability to easily see through everyone else's intentions, although only daily can be used once, but is also a very powerful bug-like ability. After confirming that Ryan had no hostility and special needs for her or Silvermoon City, Erasjo invited him and Hermione. There is a private banquet in my palace at night. I hope you will come to attend. Of course, we will definitely participate on time. Hermione walked up and promised to arrive, and Erasjo smiled and gave her 2 badges, and then the whole person disappeared into the air. You seem to adore her. As a person with a similar mind, Ryan knew why Hermione suddenly stood up and agreed to the invitation of Erasjo instead of herself. Of course, Hermione made no secret of her admiration for Erasjo. She said to Ryan through the Phoenix brand, I knew her dream before, and she hopes to build a great elven city like the Lost Mistrona that can tolerate all races living peacefully together, and there will be no more glorious city-states of conflict and killing. And she did the same. The Silvermoon City now has a peaceful living environment under the protection of powerful wizards. In addition, she has never been high, and the people under her rule treat her more as a trusted friend rather than a lord who fears civilians. In this medieval environment, she is also the only ruler who places herself as a server. How could I not admire her? It should be said that Hermione saw her dream self in Erasjo, so her psychology of worship is also easy to understand. At this time, Ryan took a badge from Hermione's hand, which was a shield-shaped badge that could be hung around the neck while wearing a silver chain. If there is nothing wrong with the book I read before, this thing is called the Resomark, which is a key that temporarily grants some people access to certain isolated areas in the palace, and is usually recovered afterwards. The rest of the day, Ryan, they all use to find a place to stay. If you want to learn magic, staying here will not be too short. It is definitely not convenient to stay in a hotel. In addition, if you want to cross-plane trade later, you always need a stronghold, so they plan to buy a second-hand house that can carry bags. As the core of the future Silver Federation, the population is second only to the deepest city in the north, the richest and the most important surface city. House prices in Silvermoon City are not low. www.mplnovel.com, especially the kind of street-fronted houses that Lane would like to buy. In addition, when the economy is very prosperous, second-hand housing is also much less than expected. Fortunately, Andorin, as a mage who grew up here since childhood, was well informed, and she soon brought news of several properties she wanted to sell. After transferring the two properties selected before, Ryan and Hermione had a little discussion and decided to buy the compound garden villa-style mansion on the commercial street in North City. It is not uncommon for an urban garden villa to occupy a third of the population as an elf. On the street side of this property selected by Lane is a double-story stone-structured shop with a loft and a 3-level basement, and on the other side is an exquisite villa with a dozen rooms. In the middle is a garden with an area of at least 200 square meters. The beige marble wall of this house is covered with creepers, and it looks very beautiful with brown tiles. The fence in the yard is also a small green thorn specially cultivated. The whole house looks just like the houses in those Japanese Western fantasy games. Ryan and Hermione came here and saw the house at first glance, and loved the house, plus the house did meet their requirements. So they just bought back the house worth hundreds of thousands of gold coins after paying off the original homeowner. Fortunately, gold, silver and precious stones in the world still maintain their value. Ryan easily paid for the room with a small metal suitcase of gold bars. Okay, let's clear it up quickly, otherwise, the party will be late at night. After everything was done, looking at the sun going down, Hermione and Lane reminded each other to change their clothes and prepare for the evening banquet. Chapter 616, Task. Ryan chose dress gowns as their clothing tonight. Fortunately, wizards in Britain are more traditional, so the shape of the gown and robe does not seem very abrupt even in this medieval world. When putting on the robe, the two people coincidentally added the Hogwarts school badge as their badge on the left chest. In addition, they wear a series of exquisite jewelry such as rings, bracelets, cufflinks and brooches. These are all sets of alchemy props or magical equipment that Ryan made before. After finally bringing the Resomark, the carriage sent by Erasjo also arrived at the door of the two people's home in this world. They quickly boarded the carriage, and then the carriage was driven by two pure white Shenjon high-headed horses towards the direction of the Supreme Palace. Originally wanted to bring Rose Crystal, but Rose Crystal didn't like this sullen aristocratic banquet. She simply greeted Ryan and they called Jill to go shopping together. The Supreme Palace is located near the center of the city, and the eastern wall of the city is integrated into the city as a fortress to provide a strong support point. This is a castle with a spire that rises high into the sky, built of heavy stones and covered with white marble. The Supreme Palace is located near the center of the city and attracts the attention of everyone passing by. The teeth of the jagged battlements are carved into the shape of a unicorn, which is full of high ceilings, shimmering marble floors, hanging plants, tapestries, carved depictions of flowers, vines, ferns and trees embossed walls with beautiful views. When he was about to enter the door, Ryan saw a group of guards wearing dazzling silver-plated armor through the window. This is the Supreme Guard who claims to be always vigilant. They only have 90 people, and the arcane power of the Magic Guard guards the Supreme Palace. The place for the dinner today was the central main tower, Dun Pagoda. After Ryan and they got off, the two silver-clad Supreme Guards walked to the two to look at the special marks on them. After asking about the intention, they bowed slightly behind them, pointed the route for them. Following the guards' guidance, Ryan and they entered the interior of the Moonshield Tower through the Unicorn Gate on the western shield of the Moonshield. After arriving at the greeting hall along the silver stairs, you can see many waiters greet guests here. A steward wearing a black embroidered gold robe found out that they were greeted first, and then led them up. This surprised a lot of customers, because the average customer is only led by the waiter. So many people began to ask people around who these two young faces are, but Ryan and they did not know about it. At this time, they had already walked through a luxurious arch under the guidance of the butler and came to Ui. As the Pearl of the Northland, there are many mages among the people who attended the party today. Naturally, they also used a lot of detection magic in the venue. Ryan, These systematic magic props on them did indeed shake the eyes of those mages. Although the remaining people could not see the magical auras, they also nodded at the way the Ryan they learned the pure French court jewelry matching from the Rose Girl world. Because all the people around didn't know each other, Ryan and Hermione could only talk boringly on one side. Just a few minutes later, Erasjo came out wearing a dark blue dress dotted with broken diamonds. After greeting everyone gracefully, she reached out and said in the direction of Ryan they were. "Tonight let's welcome the legendary Mage Liang from a distant place and his fiancée, another powerful Mage Granger. They will exchange and study in Silvermoon City for a while, and I hope the caster here can communicate with them well. In general, the introduction will highlight the nobility at this time, but if the legend is reached, the introduction will become very simple. The legendary point can prove a person's noble identity." Everyone present applauded with applause. At least 1/3 of the people here were casters, and they were very curious and welcoming to the same kind from foreign countries. For them, a unique magic system is a great research direction, and communication and learning are very conducive to the progress of the caster. After the first dance with Erasjo politely, Ryan and Hermione ran to the corner of the hall to hide, because they really did not like this kind of noble exchange occasion. Fortunately, several mages ran over to learn after knowing that Ryan was a legendary mage. Ryan and they chatted with them for the purpose of mutual exchange. Soon in this academic atmosphere, the two sides chatted fiercely, and also let the mages have a strong interest in outsiders like Lane and Hermione. The host of the banquet does not mean that the entire banquet needs to be at the venue. After a brief chat, Erasjo called Ryan and Hermione to follow her to the lounge next to the banquet. There are already several people sitting here. After introduction, Ryan found that they are some of the core members and allies in the Silvermoon City that belong to the real trust of Erasjo. The strongest among them is Tillen Hornbread, who will succeed Erasjo as the highest mage in the future. Although he is not a legend, Ryan feels that if he has enough high-level magic props and singular objects, he will fight with ordinary legends. No tie. But he should not beat himself, because as an alchemist, Ryan does not feel that his equipment can be more and better than his own. In addition, there are two ladies here, Tashandra Tyrell, the head of the Forest Church in Silvermoon City, and the half-elf Salish Alluria, the priest of the Silver Star Temple. Their strength is not strong, but it represents the power of gods, elves and druids. The following is about the discussion of the recent situation. Ryan and Hermione, as outsiders, can only listen to them. However, they think that Tillen does things to suit their appetite. At least when faced with difficulties in solving problems, they agree with Tillen's proposal to solve the manufacturing problem. Especially in the face of evil, hesitation will only cause harm to more kind people. However, Tyron is sometimes too tough, and some methods are only suitable for the enemy, not for solving internal disputes. It is clear that Erasjo also discovered this, and she began to teach Talon a qualified ruler. However, this is not the point to be discussed today. Soon Tashandra Tyrell of the Forest Church quickly anxiously stated the purpose of this small gathering. King Oberarrows against Silvermoon City. The threat is becoming more and more serious. Now the caravans in Silvermoon City and nearby cities are only half of the past. Many rangers are also killed after encountering the Orc Squad. www.mtlnovel.com. More importantly, this group of orcs, the environment caused irreversible damage. A large area of forest has become a barren land. That's why I invited these two guests from afar to come. Erasjo pressed his hands down to signal Tyrell to be restless. I intend to ask them to help us solve these disgusting orc predators as the supreme master of Silvermoon City. Orc predators, where are they? Hermione asked curiously. We only encountered a group of goblins when we rescued the caravan before. That group of goblins was driven out by the orc predators. Elason explained after a brief explanation. If you are willing to join the battle, I will arrange a harpist who is familiar with the terrain to show you the way. I think your level, as long as you don't get trapped by orbital arrows to trap his elite guard, no other enemy will be your opponent. We are happy to help, Ryan said quickly after communicating with Hermione through the Phoenix brand. It's just that we hope to get the corresponding knowledge as compensation. Of course there is no problem. Erasjo nodded in agreement. Your reward is to go to the two largest magical academies in Silvermoon City to learn all the magical knowledge up to level 6. In addition to that, I can personally exchange 2 magics for you. As long as you take out the corresponding level of magic you can communicate even at level 9. After negotiation, Erasjo said with a smile, okay, this time, this situation was originally to be done by mobilizing the Silver Armor and the Magic Guard. Now these forces can be used to maintain internal stability and preparedness. Possible problems. After all, before the establishment of the Silver Federation, too many people wanted to destroy this just cause. Chapter 617, Play. After the agreement was made, the two priests left, and Ryan and they appeared again above the party and the atmosphere of the party reached its climax. They did not return to their house in a carriage until the midnight banquet was completely over. Early the next morning, Ryan made various preparations and agreed to meet the harpist at the entrance of the Supreme Palace as agreed. Then he and the 9th level ranger named James used the power of the Silvermoon City Master Tower to reach the direction of the Moon Forest in the north of the city. That is where the Orc Chief Arrows lost the back of the Arrow Fortress. Ryan. They moved very fast in the forest. According to this ranger's point of view, they don't act like wizards at all, but like some rogues. I have to say that the veteran is very accurate. Ryan and Hermione did use the assassin's tactics in the Assassin's Creed. After advancing 5 or 6 kilometers, the traces of the massive destruction of the forest are visible. Everything is destroyed in large areas. The shrubs fell from the trees and were all cut down, and even some places were dug away. In the north, many orcs go south to loot in winter. This is also the most dangerous time of the year. In previous years we will be prepared for Silvermoon City, but this year we did not expect Obed to go south with a large group of orcs. If these orcs are not driven away or eliminated, the caravan's severance alone will prevent a large number of small villages from obtaining the winter necessities, which will cause at least half of the people to be starved to death. Not to mention these orcs' own strength is enough to cause damage to everyone around it. In fact, several rangers and elves have been killed in these days. After listening to the description of the ranger, they all felt filled with indignation. Soon under Stealth Rose Crystal aerial reconnaissance, an orc raid squad was discovered. This is also what these orcs do themselves. If it is not for them to cut down the surrounding trees, the rose crystals are not good enough to find them out of the dense jungle. Soon under the cover of the surrounding natural environment, several people avoided the orcs' perception and touched a place not far from them. After Ryan sent a signal, Hermione instantly summoned the shadow to fix the dozen orcs together on the ground. Then Ryan summoned a large net made of lightning and passed it. At the same time, Rose Crystal also summoned a lot of crystal fragments to fight down. Unprepared for such three-dimensional raid beasts, they did not expect to be able to have a Rose Crystal, an air raider with almost no warning in advance. I never imagined that a legendary mage could do this kind of sneak attack that completely disqualified him. So just one round of attacking all the orcs of this squad was collectively wiped out by the 3 of them, and the ranger who accompanied them did not even shoot an arrow. The level gap is most clearly shown here, especially for higher-level casters that have an overwhelming advantage over these lower-level fighters. In the next 2 days, Ryan attacked a dozen strongholds and killed more than 30 raid teams. The harpist had to admit that a legendary mage plus a high-level mage would be a massacre for the orcs if he ran down to attack the low-level orcs. For example, when attacking the strongest base, there were 3 teams with nearly 200 orcs. After the Rose Crystal investigation confirmed that there was no hostage in the stronghold, Ryan and they used a half-hour in the harpist's surprised eyes to build an altar in the woods near the stronghold, and then it took 7 minutes to board the altar and called a lightning bolt. The entire stronghold was reduced to ashes along with the orcs in it. After 2 days of cleaning, almost all the small and medium-sized orc strongholds and outgoing patrols in the jungle were swept away, and the rest were some large strongholds. After turning in the jungle for more than half an hour and still not finding the small-scale enemies like the previous 2 days, when they were eating at noon, the few of them gathered together to discuss the next move. Let's retreat this time with a big vote. My brother, Rose Crystal, was somewhat excited to propose that she hoped to end the war with a brilliant victory. And with the justice of Erasjo, if they can make a big contribution, they want to reward more. You are right. The investigation at least 2 hours ago found that the orcs had stopped sending raids, and they were concentrated in a few large strongholds. The enemy is no longer possible. Lane nodded at Rose Crystal. So we will have a complicated plan. If we are lucky, we can even solve the orc problem in one fell swoop. After more than 10 minutes of discussion, everyone unified their opinions, and then they packed up and touched the location of the Orc King Court that was previously detected. This road seems to be very smooth, because in the previous 2 days of cleaning up, they killed nearly 1,000 orc warriors, equivalent to half the number of local orc warriors. Under such tragic losses, Orbital Arrows had to shrink its defense to avoid being broken by the attackers. Of course, this is also no way. The Orc Chief once ordered an elite team of 100 people to be led by his most important son, Arjun 3 Boxing, from the front line to search for the attackers, but this team it was discovered by Rose Crystal as soon as it set off, and then the Harpist Ranger lured them away from the stronghold into the trap set by Lane. When Orbital Arrows found that the guard who was leading his own team was not right, everything was over. Ryan annihilated this Orcish squad through magic traps. By the way, they also killed a carbine with flames, and the power of the shadow destroyed the front line stronghold that was empty because the main force left. In the end, Orbital Arrow only saw the son who was swept away with all the money and magic props, the body of the Elite 100 team, and the frontline stronghold that turned into a huge fire. To make matters worse, in the past, a lot of food supplies were put in this outpost for the convenience of attacking everywhere. This time, Ryan was ignited by wildfires, which made the orcs' lack of food more scarce. Although the previous attack caused Ryan to kill a large number of orcs, It may be that the orcs felt timid because of the inexplicable loss of half of the warriors. The Harpist's Ranger clamored for a long time with the appearance of dozens of Ryan's temporary transformations from the transformation at a stronghold close to Wang Ting, except for the shooting of 2 orcs who accidentally exposed their heads. No other reinforcements from Wang Ting were seen in the plan. When the night was about to fall, the Ranger James left the stone men in place as planned, and then returned to the camp to eat. Sitting by the campfire he said excitedly, 3 of us are, no, 4 of us. Rose Crystal heard the Ranger's change of mouth www.mtlnovel.com only to withdraw her gaze elegantly, lifted the special small porcelain cup and took a sip of hot tea. Ranger James looked a little embarrassed at the little puppet who was annoyingly staring at himself, and then said, the 4 of us can actually make 1,000 strong orc warriors dare not go out. I think this will become Silvermoon City or even the entire Northland Minstrel's long sovereign goal. If we succeed this time, we can. Ryan said, his face became serious. But the more we can't carelessly at this time. According to the information I have read before, Burrow is a brave and ambitious orc leader. He cannot let us kill his army without making any counterattacks, especially after his most important son was killed by us just now. What you said makes sense. James also took it seriously. The orcs have a greater advantage at night than we humans. I guess they will probably attack us at night through the dark night. Speaking of which, he looked at the 7 or 8 tents in the camp and the fire in the middle of the camp that clearly required more than 4 people. But I think this camp is a bit rudimentary. These orcs are all battle-hardened. They should be hard to be fooled. We know. Hermione nodded. But our real trap is not here, as long as this place can weaken a little bit of the enemy. Well, sometimes you can't understand the money concept of your casters, James said with a shrug. He thought this place was the last trap because Ryan placed the materials in the camp at least 200-300 gold coins, but I didn't expect Ryan to spend so much money just to disturb the orcs. Chapter 618, Sneak Attacks and Anti-Sneak Attacks. Although James felt a bit strange about Ryan's arrangement, he was not quite sure what Ryan's specific tactics were. However, as a Fear and World Standard Aboriginal, he had already obeyed the rules of the mages or paladins during battle in the bone. So he didn't continue to ask questions, but quietly followed Ryan's orders to complete his task. The night became darker and darker, and the movements of the 3 big, 1 small and 4 figures in front of the fire became smaller and smaller, as if they were asleep. When the time came to about 3 or 4 in the morning, a black shadow sneaked into the camp, but when the black shadow appeared 7 or 8 meters from the fire, a transparent barrier appeared in front of him. He could not break through anyway. This barrier. The magic principle of safeguarding is very different from local magic. As a rare wanderer among the orcs, this dark figure finds that all the methods of removing magic traps he has received before have failed before this magic. After a long, short, and 3 crow calls, 4 other black shadows came to him from outside the forest. After a brief discussion for a few seconds, one of them took a scroll from his arms and released the magic inside against the magic defense in front of him. A flash of lightning hit the defensive magic in an instant, and then the entire defensive magic shattered. At this same moment, 5 or 6 crossbow arrows were shot from the surrounding tents and went straight to the shadows. At the same time, the figure sitting in front of the fire showed a dazzling brilliance, and several prepared magics flew to the orc rogue. The 5 orc rogues were wiped out by the fire before they responded. Woo! Suddenly a horn sounded, and more than 20 elite orcs in armor rushed towards the camp in 3 directions. The white part of each of their eyes was filled with blood, but just as they rushed to the front of the fire, the 4 figures around the fire suddenly poured forward into the fire, and the flame suddenly became green and exploded. In an instant, green flames were burned on the body of these 20 orc elite warriors. The flames spread quickly and burned them into green torches. After the whole body was ignited, these orcs screamed and ran to run after going. They all fell down. The scene in front of me seemed to stimulate something. There was a huge noise in the jungle, and then a roar of trembling. 3 consecutive early warning magics have been triggered, and the other party is coming very quickly. Ryan, who was ambushed next to him, moved. The harpist James's face changed quickly as he approached quickly. This should be a bed chasing himself. The armored orcs we just killed were his guards. It seems that he has found that the siege camp is all fake. Ryan raised his eyebrows. He had set up a lot of institutions in the engineering camp under the orc stronghold before, and indeed bluffed those who were in the stronghold. Orcs under siege. However, those organs should have little effect on the master-level orc berserker, such as a bed, and it has now found itself deceived. Hermione, did you find the shaman's position? Ryan asked through the Phoenix brand. When the elite orcs rushed in just now, Ryan felt that they should be enchanted with positive spiritual power magic. The orc tribe is famous for its warriors, and there are not many casters. The only shaman wizard who can come with the chief guard and have command. Reminiscent of these more than 20 orcs are chief elite guards. It was easy for them to infer that their chief, Abed, went to the siege camp alone, and the remaining guards, under the leadership of the shaman, tried to attack Ryan. But what I didn't expect was that they set up double traps in the camp to pit more than 20 elite warriors all at once. Unlike the Orcish character of ordinary orcs, Tribal shamans are often traitorous. For example, the shaman now knows that his escape at this time after the failed attack is equivalent to exposing himself to the fire range of Ryan, so he quietly hides and waits for a counterattack against Ryan after meeting with the chief. Of course Ryan couldn't allow him and the chief to make trouble for himself. Fortunately, after studying the power of death, Hermione was extremely sensitive to the life around her. Soon she felt the shaman position from the surrounding environment. On the pine tree on the left. "He is now an owl looking at us," Hermione said through the phoenix brand. "This anomaly is close to our animagus. Most people really can't see them." "No. But this shaman should not know that we have been dealing with owls all day long, and at first glance I felt that this owl was a little bit stiff." Careful inspection really turned out to be the human soul. This is the shaman's flaw, and there is absolutely no problem with changing the druid. Now that the enemy's position has been determined, Ryan first contacted Rose Crystal, and then shot a deadly steel braid inlaid with opal through Hermione's cover. The shaman who turned into an owl and wanted to pass through did not expect that a mage would actually use this physical method to attack. As a result, he was hit by a steel brace in the chest. As a shaman, even if he is already a high-level caster, but his physical quality is not very strong, especially after becoming an owl. After being hit by the steel brace, it simply triggered the death magic on the steel brace and was killed on the spot, and then returned to the original state and smashed down from the tree. At that moment, the voice in the distance had already reached. With a crackling sound, a tall orc, more than 2 meters high, broke through the obstacles of the surrounding bushes and stood on the open space in the forest that was previously used as a camping ground. "Dirty guy. Did you kill so many of my subordinates? Go to die." The orc chieftain who rushed forward to attack after seeing them. Hermione stepped forward and waved her hands to form a shield of black mist in front of him, blocking the flaming large sword in the hands of the orc chieftain. However, like the glass, the black mist shield also shattered into pieces in the powerful airflow brought by this sword. www.mtlnovel.com. Actually, humanoid creatures reached this level simply by their flesh. Hermione conveyed the astonishment in her heart through the phoenix brand, after which she threw a slap-like obsidian statue. The obsidian statue swelled when it was thrown out, and quickly turned into a 12-foot monster. It's just different from the monster sample when it was made into a death puppet at that time. This monster puppet was completely modified after Hermione got 2 death claw puppets from Ryan. Now the giant puppet has 6 arms. In addition to the original monster's own arms, a pair of 4 death claws front claws were born on the shoulders and under the ribs. The original fat on the body also turned into a hard muscle like death claw, and on this giant puppet was also inlaid with a layer of Valyria steel armor. 2 original hands holding a mace. The heavily armed trolls immediately contained the orc chief's mad attack immediately after they appeared, and they also attacked while the orc chief stopped. However, whether it was a plasma ball, black fog arrows, crystal fragments, or ranger feather arrows, all the functions were lost. After the smoke caused by the magic dissipated, the Orc King was unscathed. An invisible barrier flowing through his body blocked all the attacks just now. This is the characteristic of this world. Warrior. High-level warriors can resist some low-level spells, and the Orc Chieftain in front of him as a master-level warrior can even resist the frontal fireball explosion. It seems that this time it is necessary to use the real skills. Ryan thought of summoning the Virgin Rose, and then launched the power inside. Others tried their best to entangle the Orc Chieftain to gain time for Ryan's spellcasting. Chapter 619, Solve. Rose Crystal and Ranger James have been hiding in the surrounding forest after the war to carry out various long-range attacks on the Orc Chieftain. Although these attacks cannot hurt Obed, whether it is the arrows or crystal fragments that were shot by him, it was easily blocked with a weapon, but the long-range attack still delayed the Orc Chieftain's action, making him roar repeatedly. Hermione, while directing the puppet to resist Obed, casts shadow magic to contain his actions, but even in this way, the puppets of heavy armor monsters that the Orc Chief can still fight back one after another, and the Valyria steel armor on his body was cut out one after another. Fortunately, the 2 maces in the monster's hand were thick enough to prevent the other party from directly cutting off their weapons. Seal. Ryan used the Virgin Rose to release the first alchemy magic while Obed was in a hurry. All magical auras on the Orc Chieftain were dimmed at the same time, which means that all the magic-related equipment on his body sealed. The most obvious thing is that the big sword in his hand is no longer blazing, but like the ordinary big sword, the metal color on the blade is exposed. Transfiguration. Ryan's second alchemy fell on Obed's armor while he was dying. His armor squirmed up and melted into one body, holding the Orc Chief in it like a metal coffin. Although the chief responded in a timely manner and shattered the armor and rushed out, he was still knocked on the shoulder by the mace. Life sucks. While the shadows once again wrapped up Obed's body, Hermione began to absorb the vitality of the orcs using the shadow as a medium, but for the understanding of death, she did not collect these vitalities for your own use. It flows into your feet along the body. Soon the plants in the vicinity seemed to be alive, and Hermione felt the gratitude nature gave her. This magic worsened the traumatized Obed, The spike of the mace not only smashed his left shoulder blade, but also oscillated its internal organs, causing multiple internal bleeding. Originally relying on a strong restoring power, they can still fight with Ryan for a period of time, but now the bleeding effect is intensified, and the vitality is quickly lost. It is almost the end of the crossbow. Magic explosion. Ryan discovered this, and he immediately created a mass of original alchemy power into a pink light that hit the orc chief's chest. When that force touched the orc's chest, the skin, blood, bones and muscles were randomly changed. Afterwards, I don't know what kind of magic reaction happened, and the orc's chest exploded directly. This was a fatal explosion, and Obed's heart and most of his lungs were completely broken into pieces, and such a trauma could not be sustained even by the strong body of the master orc warrior. The orc chief only had time to let out an unwilling roar and fell on his back. Soon the blood poured out of his chest like a spring and stained the ground, and then a pool of blood formed on the ground. After the goal was resolved, everyone was relieved. Ryan had never encountered such an enemy before, so they seemed a bit clumsy when they just responded. Fortunately, they adjusted their rhythm back later. Then Ryan made an artificial amber to seal these souls again, and at the same time made a space bag to put the orc chieftain and the shaman's body together with the equipment. The mage in this world is equivalent to a machine that keeps burning money, and sometimes when a master of the class of Ryan is simply not enough money. So for the convenience of studying in the future, Ryan seriously cleaned the battlefield. Ranger James has passed all the gains from today back to Silvermoon City, and soon the harpist badge in his hand heard Erasjo's charming and crisp voice. Friends from afar, your task today is more than I imagined, and this has solved a long-term threat for the peace and security of Silvermoon City and the entire Northland. I now ask you to persist in that place. After a while, you can come back after the follow-up staff arrives. Of course I promise to increase your remuneration. No problem, I will guarantee the safety of the landing site. Lane agreed. Probably because the previous battle frightened the orcs around, so no one came here to check what happened. Ryan they waited smoothly until the arrival of Mr. Tyron Hornbrad and an unknown paladin. Obviously they were sent by means of the Master Tower in the city. When they saw Anhut Tylung performing a masteress etiquette, they said, friends from afar, your contribution will always be remembered by Silvermoon City. Alastra the lady is waiting for you at the Supreme Palace at any time. I have other tasks, so I won't send you. After he and the paladin hurriedly walked in the direction of the orc court, it seems that the Silvermoon City side is ready for the army to send over, ready to solve the lost half of the armed forces and the chief and shaman orcs in a mess. Ryan and they returned to Silvermoon City with Ranger James, and everything went smoothly. After entering the city, they bid farewell to James, and then returned to their newly purchased home to rest. After 2 days of high-intensity fighting, they felt extremely fatigued and needed a good rest. Ryan got up, and it was dawn. Also, you pressed my hair again this time. Hermione woke him up just as Ryan slept a little. Sorry, I didn't sleep well after I was tired, Ryan said as he crawled up, and found that there were a few brown long hairs on the pillow. He looked up at the sky outside the window and said a little embarrassedly, it seems that I overslept. Not as bad as you think, Hermione said. This time, we only slept for a whole day, which is much better than the last time you slept a week after finishing the production of Our Lady of Roses. Okay, hurry up and clean up. We will go to see Alastro today to get us the reward you deserve. This kind of thing is best not to let people wait too long. After getting up and packing up the breakfast, Lane, Hermione and Rose Crystal walked to the Supreme Palace on foot. When he came to the gate of the palace, a serious-looking herald received them www.mplnovel.com from his expression and his formal dress. Lane saw the shadows of the British noble stewards. After seeing the rose crystal, the herald froze for a moment, but fortunately, because she had received the instructions of Miss Laszlo, the herald quickly restored her original calmness and took them directly into the palace gate. Then head straight to the southernmost tower of the Shining Lady. Miss Shiness Tower is the residence and mage tower of Azkaban. As the most powerful mage tower in Yinayu City, it has the convenience of a magical voter and the accumulation of hundreds of years, making this magic tower face the most powerful magic tower in the city. Ryan, they are entering a running magic tower for the first time. Unlike the magic tower in the game, the area of this magic tower is larger than their imagination. The entire first floor looks more than the Hogwarts Auditorium. Be bigger. In the middle of this space is a fountain, with a huge sky blue diamond crystal over 3 meters high suspended above the pillar in the center of the fountain. There are a large number of people coming and going on the entire floor of the magic tower. These people are followers and vassals of Alastra. Most of them are casters. In addition, there are magic apprentices in various magic schools in Silvermoon City, where they can learn magic, do magic experiments or take various tasks. When the herald took Ryan and they walked in, many magic apprentices looked at them with curiosity. For them, it is rare to see strange young people summoned by Elason. Lion came to a crystal column and stopped. The herald waved his badge, telling, send me and the guests to the 5th floor. Confirmed that this tower has temporary secondary authority. The target has been determined. Please wait. Chapter 620, Learn. A burst of ethereal female voices suddenly came from all directions, a bit like the electronic vocals in the machine. This should be the spirit of this mage tower. Ryan is very interested in this kind of magically made artificial intelligence, although he can also use the fragments of Our Lady of Roses to make alchemy life with IQ much more than this. However, it is not as good as tearing in terms of cost or appropriateness. It is a pity that this kind of thing belongs to the core secret of the magic tower, and Ryan estimates that he cannot visit it. Soon a flash of light flashed through, and everyone appeared in a corridor. It seems that this magic tower mainly moves between floors through space transmission. After turning a corner, Erasjo was already standing there waiting for them. Seeing Ryan appeared in the corridor, she welcomed. "Welcome to my mage tower, dear friends from afar." Ryan immediately went forward to salute. After returning, Erasjo signaled the herald to leave, and then led the way ahead. "Please follow me." Soon they came to a door at the end of the corridor, which was made of metal and had extremely complicated magic patterns on it. Lion can feel that this door is a powerful alchemy product in itself, and it is far better than the anti-theft doors of the top vaults of Guling Pavilion in terms of anti-theft level. Obviously this is the treasure trove of Erasjo, because when they gave Ryan their mission before, Erasjo said it in private, but for some reason, they did not notify the Silvermoon committee. So this time the reward is naturally taken out by Erasjo personally. Erasjo stretched out his hand and pressed it against the metal gate, then chanted a certain spell that could not understand the language. The pattern on the shutter came alive, and after a low metal buzz, the heavy door opened. "All of you, please come in." Erasjo made a please gesture. Ryan and they immediately went in. The space here looks much larger than the outside, and it is likely that the space extension spell is used. The entire space is as big as 2 basketball courts and is filled with a lot of racks. There are various items on the shelf. Some are magic props or precious materials, and some are magic books. "My friends," Erasjo turned around and said, "because you have done far more than we agreed before. In addition to those rewards that have been agreed, I will allow you to study all magic in the Magic Academy no higher than level 7 and determine the exchange of magic content as 6 8th level magic and 2 9th level magic." "Thank you very much, Mom." After thanking them, they followed Erasjo ascended the stairs to the secret treasure trove on the 2nd floor. The upstairs of this treasure is much smaller, and maybe only more than 100 square meters. A heavy magic book was placed on it. Soon Ryan chose the magic they needed. Ryan chose a 9-level time stop and 8-level ghost avatars and reinforced iron bones. The other places were given to Hermione, allowing her to choose a 9th level and 4 8th level necromantic magic. As an object of exchange, Ryan paid for some of the key production methods of the Virgin Rose and part of the perception of death. Because these things involve knowledge of the legendary grade, it is not necessary to exchange all 8 magics. "Your magic is really amazing." Ryan and Hermione used the magic wand to extract this part of the memory and put it in a crystal bottle and handed it to Erasjo. Erasjo quickly understood what was in the bottle. "What are these silver cobwebs?" After 10 minutes, Erasjo also took out exactly the same silver thread from his temple and put it in the bottle and handed it to Ryan. "This is the power of the electorate of the magic goddess. Through some means she easily learned this simple little magic." "Mom, may we ask if we can go to the Academy of Magic for further study?" Ryan made his request after completing the transaction. "Of course, this is a very reasonable request." Also as a caster, Erasjo is very clear that Ryan they came to a brand new place after discovering another arcane system that is different from the magic they master. "I am eager to learn new knowledge and increase the sense of insight." In fact, she planned to study the knowledge that Ryan gave her tonight. "I will arrange you into the school, but knowledge is money, and the cost of learning needs to be paid by yourself." "That is of course. We can afford the money needed to learn magic." "Seriously, even if we have money, we can hardly buy knowledge most of the time," Ryan said with emotion. "That sounds terrible, and communication in the study of magic is very important, even indispensable." Erasjo said their views on the exchange of magic learning while taking them out. They were sent to the hall on the 1st floor of the magic tower. This also led to the following large group of people speculation on Ryan's identity. In fact, Silvermoon City really became the treasure and the strongest city in the Northland 1 or 2 years later. At that time, all human elves and dwarves in the Northland range from the highest forest to the west, to the eternal wilderness to the west, to the highest mountain range. The leaders will gather together and, after discussion, form a federal state, the Silvermoon Federation. Of course, this kind of federal state is extremely loose, and most regions are still semi-independent forces after joining the Federation. The only thing that held them together was the long-lived Elathro and a common defense agreement. Therefore, at that time, Silvermoon City will become the real center of the Northland, and then the center of the political, economic, cultural and magical powers of the Northland will be transferred from the 3 coastal cities to the Silvermoon Federation. At that time, Silvermoon City was the real Northland. Pearl, Ryan, they came a little earlier at this time, and the Silvermoon Federal School of Magic has not yet been established. But there are early benefits. At least this time reaching out is equivalent to sending charcoal in the snow, and it is more convenient to obtain the goodwill of Silvermoon City. As for the problem of the difficulty of going to school without a unified school, Ryan and Hermione stated that this is not a matter of phantom dislocation. Elation gave Ryan the identity of an observer. From the next day, Ryan and Hermione lived a 3-to-1 daily study life. The magic in this world is very different from the magic in the Harry Potter world, but it is a unique system. They drew knowledge from the magic school in Silvermoon City like a dry sponge. Although the system is different, fortunately, there are many ways to control power. With the help of the Silvermoon City Serenity Circle, it took them only 6 months to master the magic they should master. Of course, this is also inseparable from the fact that they use the Phoenix brand to keep their brains connected for a long time. In the learning process, 2 brains are much more efficient than 1 brain in thinking about the same problem. Not to mention that Ryan will also vigorously urge Madonna Rose to assist in thinking during learning. During this time, Silvermoon City was also calm. Perhaps the surrounding enemies seemed to be quiet because of the annihilation of the entire Orc army. The hostility of these monsters will not disappear. The pressure of Silvermoon City still exists. So, in order to build a better relationship with the city and facilitate normal communication in the future, Ryan and Erasjo conducted many transactions. As a city where weapons need to be imported, but battles of large and small size often break out. www.mtlnovel.com. Selling weapons is naturally a very good business, but it is completely sufficient to intervene in this business as a legendary mage. Not to mention that Ryan did not intervene in the fiercely competitive high-quality weapon market, but mainly sold a variety of consumables and cheap armor. For example, the arrow made by the machine and the javelin head. Another example is the stamped all-steel scales and armor pieces. These things will be very expensive if produced manually, and machine production will compress the cost to a very low price. Soon Ryan won a steady stream of orders for the Silvermoon City Defense Army. There is no doubt that this is a win-win deal. At least, the City Defense Army that can only be equipped with leather armor can now be equipped with armor, which can be better, facing various enemies in the north. In order to get closer to the relationship with Silvermoon City, they also helped to complete a lot of tasks in addition to learning Ryan. One of the most dangerous was an avatar facing Mara, the of hunting. Fortunately, the action did not use them as the main force, but just followed the avatar of Miss Forest to complete the task. So they successfully destroyed the avatar of Mara, the hunter. Although such an action would certainly offend Mara, the of hunting, it has also brought a close relationship between the good gods and Silvermoon City. On the whole, it is always earned. Not to mention that the gods of this world cannot chase other worlds, and while Ryan has been staying near Silvermoon City in this world, he does not feel that Mara has the ability to retaliate himself. Of course, this adventure also allowed Ryan to gain a lot of new knowledge. These knowledge from alchemy to the construction of magic towers, although they are all grotesque, but also complement the part of the knowledge that Ryan lacks as a caster. Chapter 621, Last School Day. During this school day in Silvermoon City, Ryan and Erasjo established a good personal friendship. On the one hand, due to the loneliness or some kind of longevity, everyone is eager to make similar friends. On the other hand, when they cast spells, Ryan did not rely on the magic Netafarian world to cast spells, but manipulated the magic and elements by themselves like the legendary spellcaster and the ancient arcane masters. This made Erasjo very happy to find that he had a companion who could discuss on the magic road. In addition, Ryan's stories about the various worlds he brought to Erasjo were also very helpful, especially after Ryan gave her a lot of historical records of multiple worlds as a gift to her. She absorbed the wisdom of those people in various worlds to the point of forgetting to sleep and eat. Ryan believes that with these examples, the establishment of the Silvermoon Federation will be smoother in the future. After more than 2 months, after feeling that the new knowledge is almost mastered, Ryan and they decided to leave the world temporarily. After learning that Ryan was about to leave, Erasjo made a special trip to send them. Please cherish, my friends, I hope we can meet again soon. Ryan had already told her that she would come back from time to time, so there was not much sadness to say goodbye. Yes, we will come back soon. The next time we come back, we will bring more things that can be used here. Hope to see a more beautiful Silvermoon City. After the final farewell, Ryan and they left the city where they lived for 8 months and walked along the business road for half an hour, then chose to leave the world in a jungle by the road. The offset points obtained during this trip are only 120 points, but the gains are indeed very large. Ryan, they have mastered a whole new set of magic. As long as they have enough time in the future, they can even be the same as the legendary mage under the real D&D system. That world is indeed a powerful world. Hermione said in the first sentence after returning, can you imagine that there are more than 1 million people in the entire Northland? but they can have 3 to 4 legends and are entire. This is the estimated number of legends from hundreds of millions of people in Europe. So it's always a good thing to walk around and look at it. Let us realize our shortcomings before we can strive to catch up, Lane said with a smile. Let's sort out the harvest for the rest of the summer vacation. For the rest of the summer vacation, Lane spent almost all of their time in their own manner to learn new knowledge, except for heading to a nearby hill to receive the ordered newspapers and letters. He was completely cut off from the magic world. Now the situation outside has become worse, and there are often reports of ordinary people being attacked. So in addition to studying, Ryan and Hermione, sometimes with Rose Crystal and her undead daughter, will sometimes wander in London to try to stop this type of attack. However, this blind operation without intelligence is not very effective. For a whole month, Ryan blocked and killed the 2 Death Eaters. In the previous torture, they learned that the Death Eaters who were doing most of the things were only Black Wizard mercenaries hired by Voldemort from Eastern Europe. They also only received a random attack order and a few safe houses. Ryan immediately ran into a safe house, but unfortunately the safe house was empty. And the other Death Eaters probably already knew there was an attacker. Ryan and they waited until the day and still didn't see other people coming back and had to give up. After the dramatic changes in the story lead to a complete change in the future, Lane has lost the grasp of the past in the future. So he didn't know what Voldemort's next plan was. He could only stay vigilant at any time. In this grim situation, the school start date finally arrived. The difference between this year and previous years is that on the 9 3/4 platforms, several Aurors stood on their wands, watching the surroundings with vigilance. Many parents sent their children on the platform, but everyone's face showed a nervous look. And the people who stood on the platform this year to go to school are less visible to the naked eye than in previous years. After getting in the car, Ryan also discovered important changes this year. As soon as I got on the bus and headed to the class box, I found that the chairman of the Men's and Women's Student Union was already there. The student union chairman handed them a carriage number after seeing them entering the door. They need to sit in the corresponding car, and in the event of an accident, they need to communicate with the Erasjo blowers in the car to protect the students. It's been a while since the blink of an eye. After coming to the designated box and putting down his luggage, Ryan said with emotion, looking at the steamy platform outside the window. This should be the last time we sit in Hogwarts to go to school. Yeah, I remember the meeting we had on the train 6 years ago. I remember I was a little flustered when I couldn't find an empty box, and then I just met you and Neville sitting in a box. Hermione recalling, seeing an acquaintance after coming to a completely strange place is a good comfort to me. Although this acquaintance has only met a few times before, Ryan said in succession. I was really surprised at the time. The door of the box suddenly opened before he had finished speaking. Mad-eyed Hermione came in and looked at the box with his magic eyes to the young Auror behind him. Okay, there is no problem here, we can check the next place. After he finished looking at Ryan, they said, yes, you are the class leaders. Don't patronize and chat together in the car, be alert. Professor, haven't you all retired yet? Hermione asked with some curiosity, because before he participated in the activities of the Phoenix Society, it can be said that after retirement, the amateur activities of the elderly are private activities, but now he commands Auror. Checking the carriage, I feel that it is not something a retired person would do. Yes, I did retire. But because the situation is getting worse recently, the Ministry of Magic has hired a large group of people to make up for the shortage of manpower, so I came back. Now I am a special consultant in the Auror office of the Ministry of Magic. Crazy Yan Han explained. Okay, I'm going to continue patrolling. You better be alert. After talking, Mad-Eye left the box and looked at the closed box door. Hermione turned and asked, how likely do you think this train will be attacked? Not very clear, but, Ryan suddenly thought of something here. Do you know where the Slytherins are sitting today? It should be the 2 cars in the front. I remember that the pureblood wizards are often together. Hermione thought for a while and said surely www.mplnovel.com. If so, in front of the Death Eaters the probability of coming to attack is most. At least they don't have to worry about accidental injuries. Ryan said, there are too many foreigners in the Death Eaters under the leadership of the mysterious people. They can't judge which child is the offspring of the pure-blooded wizard and which child is not. However, if these pure-blood descendants concentrate on sitting in certain compartments, there is no need to worry about such problems. What you said makes sense. Hermione nodded. I think for Death Eaters who can control the children to kill his own grandfather with a soul-spelling curse, and send werewolves to attack the children. It is really very kind to get rid of those who do not deserve to learn magic on the train normal practice. But, Hermione was still a little puzzled. After traveling in multiple worlds, she was no longer the pure student in the original novel. She felt that from the perspective of a power leader, Voldemort should not have dispatched his men to attack the Hogwarts Express just for a simple reason: to eliminate those who are not worthy of learning magic. However, she was preparing to discuss with Ryan at these times, and the whole train slammed and then there was a harsh metal friction. Hermione hurriedly put her hand on the seat before falling to the ground. The train was attacked. The Ministry of Magic staff and the seniors turned into defense in the local car according to the plan. Harry gathered to the front of the car. A man's voice echoed on the train, and the attack did come. They actually attacked. Why is that? Ryan muttered and clenched his wand out of the box with Hermione. At this time, the hallway was in a mess, and many students screamed and ran around. Some senior students are trying to maintain order, but it seems that the effect is not good. In short, the scene of the end in the carriage. Chapter 622, Mutation. Seeing a large group of messy students blocking the corridor, Ryan and Hermione flew back into their boxes and pushed open the window. Then he pulled the window frame by the hook and jumped onto the roof. After coming to the roof, the car has stopped. I have to say that the magic brake system is indeed easier to use than normal. Lion and the two of them squatted half squatly and watched the surroundings alertly. Sure enough, the magic light and the sound of battle came from the front of the car. It seems that the plan adopted by the group of attackers this time was to attack the front of the train or destroy the railway route. Of course, attacking a train is the simplest such plan. But obviously there are more attackers, not just the little one in front of the car. Just a few seconds after Ryan was on the roof of the car, black shadows began to appear in the woods at both ends of the railway, and then various magic shots hit the cars behind. Fortunately, at this time, the Erasjo and senior students in the carriage barely reacted to block the attacks. Clean the trees on both sides first, Lane said, contacting Rose Crystal with his soul. Soon the box placed in the box shelf was opened from the inside, and a purple light flew out of the box and flew into the wood on the side. Before departure, Ryan was a little worried that the road might not be calm. Rose Crystal voluntarily hid in the box as a backhand after knowing Ryan's worry, and now it is obviously used. Ryan and Hermione moved a short distance allusion to a wizard in the woods on the other side who was laughing and using a life-spelling curse on the carriage, and then a sleeved sword popped out in his astonished eye's throat. 1. Hermione's cold voice came from the side. I just counted dozens of magics, and if I guess right, the number of attackers hiding in the forest is about 60. There are still many things we need to do today. For Lion, the forest is their hunting ground. After attacking 2 or 3 attackers under the cover of trees, they found that these Death Eaters who came to attack the train were basically black wizards and scumbags that Voldemort had recruited from all over Europe. Although some of them are really good, they are in a complete mess. So in just a few minutes, they were easily killed by Ryan. The Death Eaters in the forest also found their associates disappearing ceaselessly. As a crowd of people, they lacked the determination to fight in the end. When Ryan killed the 8th Death Eater, the remaining Death Eaters fled in disillusionment. The same is true of the attackers in the forest on the other side, and even the mortality rate is higher than this, because for Rose Crystal and Jill, the large number of scattered enemies in this complex environment is their strength, not to mention that they are both professional assassins. By the time the Death Eaters found that they were running wrong, they had already lost nearly 1/3 of their staff. 18. By contacting Ryan on the Soul, they counted the results of the battle just now, and it seems that they left nearly 1/3 of the enemies. The Erasjo in the carriage also found that the outside attack disappeared, but they did not come out to check but stuck to their respective posts. After all, it is most important for them to protect students now. At this time, the sound of fighting in the direction of the car also disappeared. Ryan and Hermione rushed over and were surprised to find that 7 or 8 black wizards were bound by magic spells and sitting on the ground. The colored robe stood there, and beside him stood a Furors headed by Mad-Eyed Hermione. There are several wash basin-sized holes in the red front of the train, and white steam keeps pouring out of the holes. Professor, this is Ryan asked looking at the scene in front of him. These are attackers, but unfortunately we didn't ask anything. Dumbledore said, it's not because they have a hard mouth, but Voldemort only gave them an order to attack the Hogwarts Express, and nothing else was left. Fortunately, before I started this semester, I guessed that the Hogwarts Express might be attacked, so I have been on guard today and rushed over as soon as I received the notice from Moody. At this point Dumbledore frowned. The only thing I don't know is why Voldemort sent this group of Yugs to come here. At their level, even if I don't come to Hogwarts Express, I won't be too big loss. It seems that many things are not clear to Dumbledore. Fortunately, there is a corresponding plan in advance, so this is also the reason why Mr. Principal can appear here to stop the attack a few minutes after the Hogwarts Express was attacked. Ryan suddenly thought of a possibility at this time. As he was about to say something to Dumbledore, Dumbledore stopped suddenly and looked up at the zenith behind Ryan. Ryan turned his head when he saw it, and saw a white cluster of light fly over like a meteor. Seeing this scene, he suddenly had an unknown hunch in his heart. Sure enough, the silver light fell to the ground and turned into a shining, elegant lynx. Then he opened his mouth and spoke in Kingsley Shackle's loud, thick and slow voice. The Ministry of Magic has collapsed. Scrimgeour is dead. The Ministry of Magic has been blocked in a state of emergency, and they are now under control of London. Everyone's face suddenly became ugly. Fortunately, only 5 or 6 Eliters headed by President Dumbledore, Ryan, Hermione, and Moody were hearing this news, so the order was still there for a while. Can be maintained. Albus, what shall we do next? After a few seconds of pause, Mad-Eye Moody asked Dumbledore. We repaired the train first and returned to Hogwarts Castle. In any case, it is too dangerous to put the children in this unprotected field. Dumbledore made a decision immediately. It must be said that Voldemort chose a great time for action this time, because at this time Dumbledore must personally follow the Hogwarts Express to protect the students. It just gave Voldemort and the Death Eaters a perfect window period. Even if the principal knows the news of the fall of the Ministry of Magic, it is impossible to rush back. Give Voldemort's side complete control of the Ministry of Magic. Principal Dumbledore www.mtlnovel.com. Now that the Ministry of Magic has fallen, Azkaban can no longer have an accident at this time. Please allow us to go to Azkaban now to ensure that it does not fall into the hands of the mysterious person. Ryan thought, and immediately thought of another direction, so he spoke to Principal Dumbledore, who pulled out his wand to repair the steam head. What are you talking about? Azkaban must have a pass from the Ministry of Magic. Mad-Eyed Hermione retorted immediately after listening to Ryan's words, but was stopped by Dumbledore before he had finished speaking. Alasto, I believe that if he dares to say that, there must be his way. Dumbledore calmed Moody and turned to look at Ryan, and he knew Ryan and Hermione from the attack at the end of last year. Mastering a special space magic can break through the existing magic defense. It's just that he didn't tell anyone about it. He even went to the Sirius family's ancestral house to make sure that Malfoy and Narcissa, who knew about it, would not reveal the secret to others. So after Ryan volunteered, he did not reject Ryan's request, but asked, are you sure? You must know that Voldemort will definitely send someone to attack Azkaban to rescue his associates. Yes, Mr. Principal, Ryan said decisively. I can quickly change a part of Azkaban's magic defense. As long as I use the original magic there, I believe that it will be okay for a few days. Anyway, in this case, I don't think the mysterious person will come over in person. Well, I wish you all the best. If you can't keep it, you can withdraw it directly. Dumbledore knew that this time was not a time of rashness, so he simply agreed with their actions. Then we set off. Ryan took Hermione's bow to Dumbledore and then disappeared with a snap. Chapter 623, Action. After a slight bang, Ryan and Hermione appeared on an island outside Azkaban. This is also where Ryan settled when she last came. Her feet wandered to the ground, and Hermione pulled out her wand to stare at the surroundings, while Ryan quickly summoned the Virgin Rose to modify the various defensive magic circles on the island. Soon several key parameters of the magic circle were changed, which means that except for those who are allowed by Ryan himself, others cannot now move to Azkaban through the previous method. If Voldemort wants to come here, there is no other way than to destroy it frontally. It's finally in front of a group of mysterious people. Ryan confirmed something when he modified it. He suspected that it was not because Voldemort had leaked the place, but the Death Eater that he and Hermione had cleaned up before. It is a bit much. So that while Voldemort captured the Ministry of Magic, he couldn't even draw enough to save Azkaban. This is the only good news I have heard today, Hermione said, and then she looked up at the Black Triangle Castle standing on the island not far away. Oh, here is the famous Azkaban. The power of death can be seen here with naked eyes. Yes, here it is, Lane said and took Hermione's hand again. Okay, let's go in now, and then our work still needs the cooperation of those Eras. Fortunately, Professor Dumbledore visited this place last time, so Ryan teleported accurately to those Eras lounges for the second time. In the lounge, it happened that the small group of wizards he saw last time was laughing around a book. Who are you? After Ryan and them appeared in the room, the three wizards immediately found an obstacle as a support and raised their wands against them. They did not act lightly because they knew they could be silent. The people who appeared in the Azkaban castle were definitely not able to deal with the three of them. Fortunately, after only a few seconds of confrontation, the middle-aged wizard named Henry recognized Ryan. You were the kid who came here with Dumbledore last time. What are you doing here this time? Don't you know? Ryan was a little surprised, but thinking about the closure of this place, they didn't know that the situation outside was normal. So explained, just before the Death Eaters raided the Hogwarts Express. As soon as he said this, Henry put down his wand and stood up, asking nervously, is anyone injured on the train? It seems that Henry's children should also be in the car, thinking of Ryan comforting here, because of the hard work of Eras and Strikers on the car, and the timely arrival of Dumbledore. The students on the car should not be hurt. That's good. Henry relaxed at once, and he didn't raise his wand afterwards, but then asked, so what happened to you and your companions here? Because that group of Death Eaters used Hogwarts to quickly contain Professor Dumbledore. The mysterious man with his iron staff killed the Minister of Magic Scrimgeour, and at the same time completely occupied the Ministry of Magic. And in order to prevent the mysterious man entered Azkaban and released his men. Principal Dumbledore sent us two to strengthen the defense here. What? Is this true? The three wizards in Lane's face were startled. They did not expect the Ministry of Magic to fall in such a short time. After hearing the news, the two hitters appeared a little flustered and worried, but only Henry, who was a remained calm. Please wait a moment, I want to confirm that the news is true. After talking about Henry, he walked into a small room next door and closed the door. It should be through some special means to contact the Ministry of Magic. While the two men, one man and one woman, watched Henry leave and simply put down his wand and stepped forward to ask Ryan about the specific situation of the Hogwarts attack. After briefly introducing today's situation and highlighting the contributions of those errors and strikers, Henry opened the door and walked out of the little house with an ugly face. All contact with the Ministry of Magic has been broken. I contacted a friend. He told me that the Ministry of Magic was attacked and is now blocked as a whole. No one can go in and no one can come out. It seems that you brought bad news is true. After speaking, Henry stared at Ryan's eyes and asked, "So what should we do now? What instruction did Principal Dumbledore give you?" After hearing this sentence, the two strikers also looked up at them. "At least we should call everyone here before discussing the next move." Ryan sighed secretly as he looked at the 6 guards of the Azkaban guards. Those who can be dispatched here are often those wizards who are excluded from the Ministry of Magic, and are usually marginalized. Therefore, it is quite normal to deal with this chaotic situation. It is quite normal to deal with it in this chaotic situation. If he and Hermione arrive in time this time, it is estimated that the Voldemort or the Death Eater should not spend much time to get here. A few minutes later, the 9 guards of Azkaban were all concentrated in this room. After a short discussion, Ryan was nominated to be responsible for the next arrangement. This is because Lane represents Dumbledore, the only core of resistance in Britain after the Ministry of Magic was completely occupied by Lord Voldemort. On the other hand, because they have confirmed that Ryan can really break through the magic defense around Azkaban and changed part of the magic system just now, which proves Ryan's strength. The wizards still believe in the strong. Now that the Ministry of Magic is completely finished, then we must take some decisive wartime measures. The first thing is to deal with the Dementors above the castle first, because they may be against the water at any time. After confirming the command, Lane arranged the first task. "It's great. I'm fed up with those evil guys. Every time I come back from patrol upstairs, I have to eat a large piece of chocolate to slow down." Susan, the youngest striker, stood up excitedly. Novel.com. It wasn't until Henry stared at her that she threw out her tongue and sat down. But in this way, the depressed atmosphere brought about by the bad news just now dissipated a lot. After everything was ready, the 11 people in the castle stepped up the stairs in full armor. Lane found that the colder as he went up the stairs. The torches and lanterns on both sides of the stairs seemed to be hazy as if they were covered with a layer of black mist. "Okay, here we are," said the oldest Albert, who led the way. At this time they appeared in front of a large iron door, and a trace of black gas permeated through the gap of the iron door. There are now 3 teams of Dementors, each with 10. The original number of Dementors is more than this, but I didn't know what happened a few months ago, and only these Dementors were left. Weird. Last time, Rose Crystal's attack on the Dementors seemed to be quite effective. After listening to Eras's explanation, Ryan thought, if it wasn't for the last time, it was the battle between the puppets. The trouble must be much bigger than it is now. Everything went according to plan after going in. You released the Guardian Curse to drive the Dementors together, and then we wiped them out at once. After nodding, everyone nodded together, and then a team of 3 people at the same time. He put his right hand on the door. After a creaking sound of the organ running, the door opened. Behind the door is an empty hall. The whole hall is made of black stones and looks very dark. After everyone entered the hall, the operation officially started. Ryan and Hermione stayed in the hall to start the magic circle, while the others entered the prison cell as planned previously, preparing to put all the Dementors active here. Concentrate into the hall. Chapter 624, Play Against. How is your magic prepared? When Eras went to the prison cell to drive out the Dementors, Ryan quickly arranged the magic circle to stand up and ask Hermione next to her. A nervous preparation for a new magic learned from Silvermoon City. No problem. Hermione made an okay gesture. In order to prevent accidents, this time I prepared a powerful spell. I believe this spell can be used against evil creatures like Dementors. After listening to this sentence, Ryan nodded with confidence, and he had a top alchemist as a guide. After Hermione began to analyze the death rules, no one could give her precise guidance. So before she could only use those marginal magics such as shadow magic or blood magic to try to exert the power of death, while trying to collect information for self-study. Unfortunately, even with so many worlds as the backing, there are still not many suitable ways to use the power of death. The only thing that should be touched is the part of the information about Moshine's corpse that Uncle Jude took out after hearing Ryan's distress, but for Hermione, things like keeping corpses are really not of her interest, let alone this does not fully exert the power of death. The same is true in this world, except for the life-spelling mantra that can be related to death. Only the corpse is made. But these black magics with Sirius sequely are at best reference value, so for a long time before, Hermione used the power of death as clumsy and inefficient as the people who took the RPG bazooka. Fortunately, the last trip to Faerun World solved all this. As one of the most powerful legendary magicians in the North, Erasjo collected almost a full set of general magic. During that day and night study, Hermione obtained the key to open the door used for the power of death. Today is the first time she has shown her strength after returning here. Ryan used a wand to light up a few carved metal pieces that had just been placed in the corner, to ensure that even if Hermione's spelling was slightly wrong, he could make up for it in time. A few minutes later, as the cold feeling continued to intensify, a group of Dementors in their cloaks, showing rotten limbs from the cloak, swarmed into the hall from several passages. Behind them there are flesh and blood patrons driving them. Spirit Nova. Seeing that most of the Dementors had rushed into the hall, even some Dementors rushed to a place 5 or 6 meters away from her. Hermione waved her wand hard after chanting the mantra calmly. In an instant, an invisible wave of souls spread out with her as the core until it covered the entire hall. In the face of this kind of magic specifically for incorporeal creatures, in the world of Harry Potter, it is considered that only the patron saint can resist the Dementors as fragile as the castle on the beach. In the surprised eyes of the prison staff who were chasing behind, the Dementors stopped moving at the same time as Hermione's wand was waving. A subtle click and click came out of these Dementors, and then all the Dementors began to emit a lot of black smoke to the surroundings. In just 10 seconds, the Dementors in Azkaban Castle disappeared completely. This is incredible. The guards, after confirming that the Dementors had indeed disappeared, put away their physical guardians, and after carefully checking the hall, the youngest Susan couldn't help but sigh in surprise. Lively looked at Hermione with curious eyes. It's that simple. The monsters disappeared. It's not too difficult, as long as you master the power of death. Hermione was very happy that she had achieved such accomplishment for the first time using the power of death in combat. Susan seemed very happy after being asked. So I picked up some non-critical things and started talking, but this is enough for wizards who don't know another magic system. Let's next. The oldest Traralbert just opened his mouth, and heard a huge roar from outside the castle, as if someone was hitting with a huge siege hammer. The wall is the same. Damn. The attackers came too quickly. Ryan felt the impact of Azkaban's magical defenses at once. Now everyone follow the method in the previous plan to protect their respective areas according to the team. I believe that now the mysterious people should not come over in person, so we can keep it here with the help of the magic circle on the castle. Lane saw the guards' faces not good looking, so he exhaled loudly, and at the same time released a newly learned magic firm confidence. This second level magic effect is very good, and after calming down, they also knew that Voldemort could not come by himself just after he captured the Ministry of Magic. Within a few seconds, the guards recovered their composure, and then began to rush to their positions in the castle to prepare for defense. After everyone had gone away, Ryan walked upstairs, and Hermione passed a parchment behind him and asked with a very quick speed, "The prisoner downstairs is not a big problem, not the previous one. I was arrested by the Ministry of Magic for a while. Some minor criminals who only need to stay here for a few months have been committed. I believe they will stay in their houses for a while, but the heavy criminals upstairs how to do? 6 real Death Eaters, plus 3 black wizards who committed a lot of crimes. Are there only 9 people in total?" Ryan did not stop, but looked down at the list and said, "Then you can go directly to the prisoner's prison area after going upstairs. I think I can stop the attackers coming by myself. I'm going to the prison cell." Hermione thought about something immediately, and she bit her lip lightly. "Is an emergency prevention plan needed today? It shouldn't be too much. I don't think the Death Eaters are easy to get in when they have defenses here." Ryan reassured that after experiencing so much world, Hermione still has some psychological obstacles to killing unarmed people. Even if these people do deserve it. Just in case. So just in case, as long as you send me a signal, I will execute all the convicts as quickly as possible," Hermione said, looking at Ryan with a slightly surprised face. "After so much experience, I am no longer as naive as before. I know there are some things that I don't like but I still have to do." Ryan took a deep breath and then turned to hug Hermione. He knew how difficult it was for Hermione to make the change now. A few seconds later, the blushing Hermione broke free from Ryan's arms, and then walked into the guard room beside the stairs leading to the gate of the heavy prison area. www.mplnovel.com. While Ryan pulled out her wand, continue up the stairs. The prison cell for the prisoners is on the top floor of the castle. After saying goodbye to Hermione, Ryan went up the stairs for a short while and came to the front of a heavy iron door. After using the method the guards told him to knock on the iron door with magic, Ryan opened the iron door and stood in the castle. Top level. A milky white translucent protective cover has now been raised around Azkaban Castle. From time to time, 1 or 2 explosion sparks bloom on the protective cover. Through the protective cover, Ryan saw a dozen Death Eaters riding on a broom and trying to attack with a wand in his hand. Their level is very general. If only this level, Lane thinks they should not be able to attack. However, they did not intend to attack the castle in this way. After seeing Ryan coming out, one of the Death Eaters shouted, "Quickly stop your resistance. According to the Ministry of Magic, you should immediately put Azkaban handed over to us." After talking about the Death Eater, he waved the parchment in his hand, and the sharp-eyed Ryan saw that it was indeed covered with the seal of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement of the Ministry of Magic. Ministry of Magic? Sorry, I don't think the Ministry of Magic is a legitimate organization now. Although Ryan was a little surprised that Voldemort and the Death Eaters were controlling the speed of the Ministry, he refused the request of the Death Eaters decisively. "Don't deliberately fight against the Dark Lord. At this time, if you don't surrender, no one can save you," the leading Death Eater shouted angrily after hearing Ryan's reply. "If you surrender now, I can guarantee the safety of your life. But if you continue to be stubborn, when we enter, you and all the resistance will die miserably." After he finished, he took out a small silver ball and slammed it against the barrier. Chapter 625, Pink Devil. After the Death Eaters found that they could not attack Azkaban, the lead man took out a small silver ball and threw it onto the magic barrier. The moment when the ball touched the barrier, a strong light was emitted from the contact point, and then a strong energy spread from the contact point to the four sides. When the light was weaker, Ryan discovered that the magic barrier was actually penetrated by the small ball. With the contact point as the center, the entire magic shield dissolves and collapses as quickly as the butter hit by the red-hot knife. "Praise the great Dark Lord!" the leading Death Eater shouted loudly, and it seemed that the thing he had in his hand was given to him by Voldemort. After shouting the slogan, a dozen Death Eaters flew toward the main part of Azkaban Castle like an arrow with a broom. Halfway through the flight, they were divided into two paths. Some of them quickly descended on the broom in an attempt to attack the main entrance of the weakest magic defense, while the other half pulled up the broom and flew to Lane standing on the roof. The next step is to face up. Let me see what level I am now. In the previous battles, Ryan generally used sneak attacks, surprise attacks or preset positions to fight. And now, after mastering some of the rules of alchemy, Ryan intends to confront these dark wizards head-on in order to determine what his level of melee is. After inspiring Our Lady of Rose, Ryan's back grew crystal-like pink transparent wings again. But when he just flew up into the sky to meet the Death Eaters, he saw that the Death Eaters in front of him began to turn in a panic, and fled in the opposite direction frantically. "The devil is actually here." "Pink demon, why don't they say Piggy Page?" Ryan began to be confused, but soon remembered that he was waving pink wings on the day he helped Harry leave from his aunt's house. It seemed that the attack left a deep impression on the group of Death Eaters. Even so, Ryan had never imagined that they had reached the point of escaping directly after seeing the pink wings. But in fact, Ryan's deterrent is not so strong, but this time the Death Eaters are also some people. According to the original plan, they should easily receive the chaotic Azkaban prison and release the prisoners and Death Eaters after the Ministry of Magic was broken, and then use these Death Eaters and Death Eaters wrapping up other criminals creates chaos. Even if there were guards stubbornly resisting, they felt that as long as the thing given by Voldemort was used to break the Azkaban defense, the people inside would flee. Then they can complete the task given by Voldemort without any effort. But the appearance of Ryan gave this group of new Death Eaters who thought they could pick up a cheap blow, and they had no plans to participate in a battle, and their morale collapsed on the spot. At this time, the real elite was taken by Voldemort to attack the Ministry of Magic. All the speculators or parallels came here. In the case of drastic changes in the situation, it is also reasonable to lack the corresponding judgment to directly clear the morale. Saw that the group of men who were still menacing just now fled around. Ryan flapped his wings and chased down. However, the group of guys that he was staring at found Ryan chased down and flew away in all directions. In this case, Ryan could only kill one target. After chasing out a few hundred meters, Ryan saw the man in front of him illusionally before he attacked. An empty broom and a right leg were left in place. Phantom shifting is not always possible. In panic, phantom shifting is prone to various dangers. For example, the Death Eater in front is split, and if the damage to the limb cannot be retrieved, then the wound is as if it was injured by black magic. It is impossible to grow back with magic. Fortunately, looking at the broom and thighs that fell like the sea, Lane snorted and returned to Azkaban Castle. After all, his task was to guard the castle. At this time, all the attackers had escaped from the area affected by Azkaban. The Phantom moved and several guards were coming out of the castle to check the place destroyed by the group of Death Eaters. Is the battle over? After landing on the roof, Hermione came out of the door of the roof. How can it be so fast? It feels like there is no fighting. I don't even hear the sound of something hit after the magic attack. There really is no fighting. Ryan folded his wings. The attackers didn't expect anyone to resolutely resist, so they retreated after they found someone resolutely resisting. It turns out that way. Hermione opened the door and walked downstairs. Lane followed behind her. It's really stupid to attack a castle guarded by 11 people with 12 people. But we'd better arrange them to prevent them from bringing more people to attack. Ryan does not think that there will be a second batch of attackers. Today Voldemort's core mission should be to completely capture the Ministry of Magic and stabilize the situation. In order to achieve this goal, his main force is mainly piled in London. Even because of the lack of power in his hands, Voldemort hired a black wizard from Europe to attack the Hogwarts Express to ensure that Dumbledore could not interfere with his actions. Therefore, it is impossible for him to try to win Azkaban while taking over the Ministry of Magic. The reason for sending people to Azkaban is that in addition to hoping to further disperse the strength of Dumbledore's side, I thought that it would be possible to use the chaos to entrap the criminals in the prison and increase their own strength. As for the Azkaban castle itself, Voldemort will not foolishly disperse not much power in his hands in multiple places while Dumbledore is still alive, especially in places like Azkaban where value is not great. However, for reasons of prudence, Ryan and they are still on alert in the castle to prepare for possible enemies. Fortunately, The principal that the silver ball just destroyed the magic barrier just used the powerful magic power to overload the barrier. So after spending half an hour, Ryan repaired the magic barrier of Azkaban Castle. It looks like we will at least wait until the dark classmates enter Hogwarts Castle before they can get reinforcements, Hermione said at dinner at noon, and a murmur came from a magic radio on the table. www.mplnovel.com. As usual, the broadcast of the Wizards should broadcast the news at noon, but now there is nothing. The guards next to also looked sad, and many of their friends could not get out in the Ministry of Magic now. The only good news for them is that many of their loved ones are in the Mole world, and the coups of the Wizards have not been affected temporarily. I must let my mother and my dad go abroad to hide. I am worried that they will be the target of the attack in the current situation. Susan said, when the replacement man comes, I will go out as soon as possible. Find a way to get my parents to Australia or New Zealand. In addition to Susan, everyone else also revealed the intention to let his family leave, and even a few plans to go with his family. Fortunately, our parents have left, and don't need to worry about this for the time being, Ryan said to Hermione after listening to everyone's discussion. As for the reinforcements, it doesn't matter at a later time. Anyway, we have nothing to do, and this place is taking photos. The soul monster is quite habitable after leaving, and it doesn't matter if you stay longer. Yes, but we have a high probability of missing the school banquet today, Hermione said with a fork and dialed the green peas on the plate. I just don't know what song this year's hat will sing. Although its song is very unpleasant, I still feel sorry when I can't hear it, especially since this is our last school banquet.